free mobile app. And there we are on the video. Facebook, YouTube. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Hennick producing today's show. You out there, it is a beautiful day. But gosh, it's almost 90 degrees outside. First day of shorts. Got the shorts on today. What's going on, everybody? Hopefully you're enjoying the nice weather. But we got a lot to dive into today. We had two terrible games yesterday in the play-in tournament, and I'm hoping to get better action tonight. I basically did not watch any of the first game because it was never close. But the Pacers, I was watching a lot early. The Pacers just absolutely ran away from the Hornets last night. And then too much Jason Tatum, man. Jason Tatum looked like the player who said, Mike Gill, you always say I can't be the best player on the team that wins the championship. Well, let me prove you wrong. As Tatum puts up a 50-burger last night, my buddy texted me and said, you might be right. Maybe Washington really didn't want to play the Nets. They sure didn't look like they wanted to play the Nets last night. Man, they looked like they had the Washington Wizards, who have been one of the great stories of a yawning through second half of this basketball season. I say yawning through, like people just kind of sleptwalk through this basketball second half of the season. But the Wizards have been a great story, man. They have been a good, fun basketball team. They sucked last night. They were terrible. And they will now play tomorrow night against the Pacers. And the Celtics will now face the Nets in round number 1. And that game will be on Saturday. And I guess the Wizards and the Pacers now, that's your matchups for the Sixers. One of those two teams, the Wizards and the Sixers, the Wizards and the Pacers will face the Sixers in round number 1. So you will either face an Indiana team who, by the way, just beat you recently. I mean, they just beat you and beat you pretty, I don't want to say handily, but they beat you. When was that game? May 11th. Pacers beat you May 11th. And the Wizards, I think the Sixers swept this year. I think they beat them all 3 times. I think most of those games were earlier in the season. I don't know that one of them really jump out. I don't think the Pacers, I mean, obviously the Pacers don't have Bradley Beal and they don't have Russell Westbrook. So that kind of puts you in that camp of, well, they're the better team, right? The Wizards are, because they have Beal and they have Westbrook, so I'd rather avoid those two. But the Pacers are a team that, if you remember when the Sixers played the Pacers on the 11th, it was kind of a, scrappy game. The Sixers had a lead. And then, if you remember, the Pacers did a good job defending Joel Embiid late in that game. They're a team that scores a lot of points. The Pacers can score. And heck, they scored a bunch of points last night, and Karis LeVert, who's maybe their best scorer, did not play in the game last night. So, in that game against the Sixers, Sabonis, he's a problem. LeVert had 24 points in that game. He was a problem. The Sixers lost that game 103-94 in Indiana against the Pacers, and that was just 2 weeks ago. So you have a little bit of recency to go back on and say, the Sixers didn't look all that good in that game. That was a game, I said they looked good. Joel Embiid did not play in that game. So that was one of the things in that game. No Joel Embiid in the game against the Pacers a couple of weeks ago when they played in the game. Harris had a good game. Simmons had the good game. But I'm trying to remember what happened in it, because the Sixers had a lead. And I think that was the game where I'm trying to go back and remember. Because that was the game where Doc Rivers, after the game, said, we did not look good offensively. I thought this was an offensive loss for us tonight. That's the game. Because the Pacers trailed for almost 3 quarters in the game, if you remember. And then the Sixers, Indiana had 75-72. They were down. And then the Sixers went on an 8-0 run, but the Pacers kind of wouldn't go away. And then late in that game, they just kind of fell apart. LeVert hit that big 3 late in the game, and then that was kind of it. So there you go. You got Sixers, Pacers, or Sixers, Wizards, and that game Now, my prediction for that game is one of two things. Now, I kind of caught this because last night on my trusty DraftKings Sportsbook app, I was looking at what the lines for some of these matchups were. And in that, it had the Knicks game against the Hawks on Sunday already scheduled for 2 o'clock. So they kind of let the cat out of the bag unless DraftKings is wrong. I would imagine they're not. But DraftKings lists the game on Sunday, the Knicks game on Sunday, as 2 o'clock. So it looks like the Knicks and Hawks. Now, if you're following the model of Saturday, now there is no 2 o'clock game on Saturday. You have a 2:10 game on Saturday. There is a 2 o'clock game is the first one. A 4:40 game is the second one. So if you're following that model, if they're going to stay with the same times on Saturday that they do on Sunday, it looks like the Knicks are going to play the 2 o'clock game, which would be the first one, which would mean to me that you might get Golden State and whoever they play in the 4:40 window. Nah, probably not. I would say you will get the Lakers in the 4:40 Sunday window. And then the Sixers could be the 8 o'clock game. I'm not sure because Sunday's way different than Saturday. They're way different ballparks when it comes to television viewing. Nobody's watching TV. Like Saturday night's a terrible a terrible TV night. But when it comes to Sunday, they want you in front of the TV. They think you're in front of the TV. You know, you got those 3:30 Sunday afternoon games a lot of time on ABC. So I don't know. But this is what I do know. The Sixers are playing one of those two teams. And look, those are two games that you should pretty much dominate. Two series that the Sixers shouldn't have a problem with, especially when you saw some of the deficiencies and warts last night that the Washington Wizards have. Look, the Washington Wizards are fun. The Washington Wizards can score. They couldn't do it last night. Why? Well, Brad Stevens put together another good game plan, and I thought that obviously Tatum was way too much last night, but you had other factors in that game. Beal didn't have a great night last night, didn't shoot the ball all that well. 1 of 6 from three-point range for Bradley Beal. Westbrook obviously was not great last night either. I mean, 20 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists. That's not a terrible night at the office, but he was not himself either. And they don't have a whole heck of a lot after that. I mean, this is a team that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Neto gets regular rotation minutes for them. Ish Smith gets a lot of rotation minutes for them. Bertans couldn't shoot it last night. He was 0 of 7 from three-point range. So if you're not getting a good night from anybody other than Westbrook and Beal, they have a tough night at the office. And they didn't shoot it well at all last night. They were 3 of 21 from three-point range. I mean, it's a make-or-miss league. We know that. Boston shot 15 of 45 from three-point range last night. You're not winning that game. You're just not. I mean, Tatum was bonkers. The numbers on Tatum last night were just eye-popping. He had his – how about this? Tatum had a 50-burger, and the third career 50-point game for him. He's the 6th player in Celtics history with a 50-point game in a tournament-type game. It's not really a playoff game. The only other guy to do it was Larry Bird. So it tells you what kind of night Tatum had. But here's another thing. This is big. As big as Tatum was last night, this is what the Celtics have been lacking. Kemba Walker almost had 30 last night. He had 29 points. And when they signed Kemba Walker, Kemba Walker was an all-star with an awful team in Charlotte. Kemba Walker was supposed to be the guy that kind of gave you the production of Kyrie, but was more of a team guy. Kemba Walker's been hurt a lot in Boston. Kemba Walker's been banged up a lot since he's gotten there. He just hasn't been the same player. But over his last 5 games, he's averaging almost 30 points a game. If they can get, now Jason Tatum's not going to score 50 every night, but if they can get Jason Tatum playing like this and Kemba Walker giving you 29 a game, which is what he's averaged over the last 5, I'm not asking for that average, but if he can give you 24, 29, 23, 28, be that kind of scorer, the Celtics could be an interesting out. It's a shame for them that they don't have Jaylen Brown. That would make the series against the Nets a lot more interesting. I mean, I can give them a game in that series. Maybe Tatum has a big game somewhere. But the Celtics, who are now, think about this. The Celtics are in the playoffs for the 7th straight year. They last missed the playoffs the year the process started, 2013. It was Brad Stevens' first year as the head coach down there. It's also the year that the Sixers hired Sam Hinkie and started their process. And here we are 7 years later. Who's in a better spot? Who did it better? The Celtics or the Sixers? Sixers are the 1 seed. Celtics are playing in the play-in game. So the Celtics have been in the playoffs for 7 straight years. Sixers have been in for 4 straight. They only missed the playoffs those 3 years. 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16. They were in the playoffs. And obviously, the Celtics have been to an Eastern Conference final 3 times. The Sixers have not. So these two teams have a lot of parallels that will always kind of be talked about because of the nature of what the Sixers did and the nature of what the Celtics did to get to where they are. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City will join me to discuss this a little further coming up at 2:40 today on the Sports Bash. Mike on the text board. Mike, hoping for a late Sixers game. Too nice of a day on Sunday not to be outside. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this because there's a lot going on Sunday. You got a lot of good games, by the way. Saturday and Sunday, the playoffs begin. You're going to have games all day. Rodney Johnson's watching the show on YouTube and says, Mike, the Hornets looked like they were playing a preseason game compared to the Pacers' intensity. Yeah, I mean, the Hornets are a team that, look, you got a lot of young players on that team. They have not been in that type of situation. But that being said, they look really sloppy last night. We talked about how well Boston shot the ball, how poorly the Wizards shot the ball. I thought the most disappointing thing was just the energy, the lack thereof. The Wizards just had nothing last night, right? They had nothing last night. And this is a Celtics team that was really bad. I mean, they lost 10 of 15 down the stretch. But Washington just could not get a 3 at all. They struggled all night long shooting the 3. I mean, I'm like all excited. I'm ready to watch this game. All right, the Phillies are down. More on that coming up. Phillies are down. Wheeler's dealing, but the Phillies offense just nothing burger. All right, here we go over to Celtics Wizards. I'm in. Playoff hoops, kind of, sort of, I guess. I don't know. The hell, we still haven't figured out what they're calling this. And then the Wizards come out just, laying bricks. Now, they came out and played much better in the second, but that third quarter was awful. I mean, and Tatum was there. Look, Tatum's young, 23 years old, but he's been to the playoffs, and he's been in some big moments. So, obviously, Tatum's a guy, like I said, can he be the best player on the team that wins a title? If he plays like that, of course, not 50 points, but I'm just saying with the intensity. Some nights Jason Tatum scores 50, and then other nights you're wondering, man, what happened to that guy that people think could be the MVP of the league? Now, that doesn't happen often, but if I say a lot, Joel Embiid's 27. He was really good at 24, but look how good he is at 27. That could be Jason Tatum. At 27 years old, that's 4 seasons down the road, 3 or 4 seasons down the road for Tatum. Just think about how much better he's going to be 3 or 4 years from now if he's as good as he is now. And then, obviously, the Wizards, they start slow offensively. They had Beal and Westbrook combined for 2 of 9 shooting in the first quarter. Like, welcome to the play-in tournament, whatever. You want to say welcome to the playoffs, but I guess it's not. But you got these two all-stars, Beal and Westbrook, and they come out with a nothing burger. And then Tatum, he gets off to a hot start. And look, Boston now goes to play Brooklyn. The only thing you can hope is that, they're not beating Brooklyn. It's not happening. But the only thing you can hope right now is that they get scrappy and they give Brooklyn a little bit of a fight and maybe draw that to 6 games. I think your best case scenario is that maybe gets to 6 games. But you go to the other game real quick, because the comment that we have posted up on the video screen was Charlotte and the way they shot the ball. You're right. They were down. They were buried in the first quarter of that game. They gave up 40 points in the first quarter. Hello, defense. They gave up 39 in the third, 36 in the fourth. Awful defense. They gave up 144 points. Now, Indiana can score it. But another team, they shot 12 of 40 from three-point range, and Indiana shot 16 of 35. One team shot 30% from 3. The other team shot 45% from 3. You shoot 45% from 3, you're going to do damage. And that's the problem the Sixers could run into against Indiana, is they can shoot the 3. They can shoot the 3. And McDermott was, oh my God, was McDermott unconscious last night early in that game? For God's sakes. Brogdon, too. And keep in mind, they scored 144 points last night, and LeVert didn't play. Yeah, Rodney, the first game, you're right, the Pacers-Sixers, Embiid was out, and Simmons, he didn't play a lot in that fourth quarter. You're right. Sports Bash Live, 97.3, ESPN, the free mobile app. So there's your play-in stuff. We'll continue to hit on that because obviously the West ones are tonight. That Lakers-Warriors game, obviously we're all going to be tuned into that. That is your late game tonight. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. If you're driving around late, we got you covered for the Lakers and the Warriors. And, of course, the early game, which is Memphis and the Spurs. Not as much of a buzz around that one, let's say. The Knicks, by the way, say they plan to admit 13,000 fans into Madison Square Garden starting with that team's first playoff home game in 8 years against Atlanta on Sunday. So you're seeing some teams getting fans back in the stadiums, just like the 76ers. I think they will be at 50% on Sunday. I would imagine that those games are going to be all sold out, all 50%. So it's getting a good feel, getting the playoffs back underway. Things are going in a good direction. Feels like a good thing there. And these playoff games are these tonight's the play-in games, and then these playoff games on Saturday. They got the Saturday schedule released. I don't know if you've seen the Saturday schedule for the first round games, but on Saturday it will be you're getting Heat Bucks at 2. You're getting Clippers Mavericks at 4:30. You're getting Celtics Nets at 8, and you're getting Portland Denver at 10:30. So that's kind of and we'll have the Mavericks and Clippers game for you at 4:30 here on 97.3 ESPN. So the games, obviously, Heat and Bucks, I will be highly invested into that. I will be somewhat invested in Celtics Nets. I don't think that's going to be much, but I'm interested to see. But I would rank the Saturday games for my interest. Heat Bucks number 1. Portland Denver, I'm intrigued by, but Denver without Murray loses a little bit of luster there. Luka, Kawhi. So I think I would go Heat Bucks, Mavericks Clippers. Celtics Nets because it's East against West. That Portland Denver game, I don't see either one of those teams making it to the finals. So I'll say that's my number 4 for the games on Saturday. But there you go. We are just getting started, and we hope you'll join us for the full ride. 609-403-0973. Tell us, Which team would you rather face, Pacers or Wizards, in round number 1? The Eagles have made a signing today, and I got the details right now at 973ESPN.com, or I'll tell you on the other side here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Eagles add more depth to the offensive line. Check it out now at 97.3ESPN.com. So, Josh, you need to remind me, typically I wear earbuds, and I wear them in both of my ears. Well, I saw Dr. Paul today, who was listening to the show one day when I said I had some allergy issues, and he texted in and said he wanted to help me with the allergy issues. So we set that up, and I went down and saw Dr. Paul Lewis down in Cape May Courthouse, and we tried to fix my allergy problems. But to do so, I had to put some stuff in my ear, and I can't wear my earbud that I typically wear. But I'm so used to putting them both in my ear. I've done it like twice already today where I picked up the earbud, and I was like, no, I can't. So I'm only listening out of one ear today, so I might be talking louder. So this is going to be the next 4 weeks I have to do this. So I said to him today, we're going through all the stuff. This was a wild technique, by the way. What an unbelievable experience. It was so cool. I implore you, if you've got these allergy issues. But so before I go, I won't go through all that stuff with you yet. But, he's checking all my allergy problems. And then after I'm done, I said, oh, by the way, can I go in the pool? And he's like, what pool? I said, well, I'm going in the pool. It's nice out this weekend. And I probably should have told him that beforehand, right? So now I can't go under in the pool. So I can't put the earbud in, and I can't go under the water right now. But I feel like a new man all of a sudden. Feel like a completely new man all of a sudden. I mean, the allergy problems, people heard, I've been telling you all week, my allergies have been terrible. And, here we are. Feeling fine. Feeling pretty good. Pretty good. So thanks, Dr. Paul. That was fun. It was really nice meeting him, and I enjoyed the experience. It was a heck of a learning experience, man. I was just in awe of some of the stuff that was going on. And sometime down the road, maybe I'll bring that up. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. So the Eagles made a signing today, and they add more depth to the offensive line. They signed former Colts third-round pick LaRaven Clark. Now, Clark, this is interesting, okay? So those of you who don't know who Clark is, he played at Texas Tech. I said to Josh, I remember him more at Texas Tech than I do Indianapolis. But obviously, his time in Indianapolis, he was kind of a depth guy. He started last year and then tore his Achilles. So he tore his Achilles in week 13 last year. This is why this is interesting. Because if he tore his Achilles in week 13 of last season, do they think he's going to be healthy enough to be ready to play? Now, Josh, what would you say? If you tear your Achilles in week 13, I mean, that means you've tore your Achilles in about November, sometime in November. So November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August would be 9 months. So you're pushing that he would be ready for the season. But here's what this signing is interesting to me about. We'll talk to Mosher about this today. If he's healthy enough to play, he provides another depth option. He played guard and both tackle spots. You know who doesn't play both tackle spots? Andre Dillard. So this is interesting. Sirianni obviously knows Clark. He played with them. He was the coach in Indianapolis. He brings Clark over from Indy. Does this make Dillard expendable? There's a lot of teams in this league that have bad offensive line play. Real bad. Somebody had to have scouted Dillard when he was coming into the league. He's only been in the league 1 year. He didn't play last year. So he's fresh enough in the league that somebody's scouting department said, we really like Dillard when he was coming out of the draft. If we can get him for, I don't know, 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, and we'll throw you a bad contract. We'll give you a corner that, now that's the thing. We got to find a corner that a team is saying, look, we just don't need this guy. We don't want this guy anymore. He doesn't fit our system. What did I say about a week ago? Find a team that has a new defensive coordinator. Find a team that has a new head coach that has a new system. They're the teams you got to try to find. Now, Joe Douglas was here when they drafted Andre Dillard. Maybe he's interested in Andre Dillard. I don't know. Start making calls because LaRaven Clark, you would think you signed LaRaven Clark to be your swing. He's a swing tackle. He's your classic He could play left. He could play right. He could even play some guard. I would imagine he becomes like the Matt Pryor, right? Matt Pryor played guard and tackle. He sucked at both of them. Clark, I don't know that he's going to be much better, but he certainly is a guy who knows your system. 6'5", 311 pounds. His signing that depth to a position that has been racked with injuries. I mean, 5 different players off the top of my head started at least one game at tackle, right? Am I missing anybody? Jason Peters, Jordan Mailata, Matt Pryor, Lane Johnson, and Jack Driscoll, I think all started a game at right tackle. Is there anybody that I missed that played right tackle or left tackle? Peters and Mailata played left. I think Pryor played left. Pryor also played right. Lane Johnson played right. Driscoll played right. Who else? Anybody else play right tackle? I feel like I'm missing somebody that got a start at right tackle. Did somebody I'll have to look to see if anybody else started a game at right. I think someone Brett Toth, I think also. Is it named Brett Toth or Matt Toth? The guy from Air Force or Army or one of the academies, right? He started a game, I believe, at right tackle. I'm pretty sure Toth started a game. I think he started the last game of the season, that game against Washington. I think he started the last game of the season at right tackle. So that would be 6 different guys who played tackle last year. If and I'm just going off the top of my head, there could have been other guys who played tackle for this team last year. So getting a guy that knows your system, can play multiple positions, I think can't hurt. I'm not telling you this is a Super Bowl winning signing here. By no stretch of the imagination is it. But what it does is it gives you a guy that makes Dillard, I think, expendable. Now, he started at both left and right tackle in his career, something Dillard struggled with during his rookie season. He had a rough outing playing right tackle. He seemed much more comfortable playing his natural left tackle spot. He also played right guard for his time. I think in 2017, he played 5 games at right guard. There are obvious ties to the Eagles with Sirianni. He was the offensive coordinator. It gives Clark a solid chance of sticking around if he's healthy enough to play. He's appeared in 47 games. He started 15. He played 3 games last season as a starter. The Eagles' offensive line could turn out to be one of the better units in football if they can get healthy. And adding him gives them a player with more familiarity to Sirianni's offense. And with Dillard's lack of versatility, he could be used as a trade chip now. With the Eagles still needing to find that starting corner, the former first-round pick might be attractive for a team hurting for offensive line help.
So I might have found you a guy, a corner.
You got a guy.
The Chargers have a new defense coordinator and head coach.
They do. Their former
Rams
head coach was Anthony Lynn. He is no longer there.
Right. Now it's Brandon Staley. So Michael Davis, he stands at 6'2". He started the last 2 years for the Chargers. He's in his mid to late 20s. He could be an option.
I'm familiar with Davis.
He also has
He's like a Steven Nelson.
He also has a contract that the Chargers might be interested in moving on from.
Okay.
He's under a contract for the next 3 years.
All right.
And it's not big money, but it's big enough money where the Chargers might look at it and be like, does this guy really fit our guy's system? Does he really what we really want? And we know the Chargers need offensive line help. Big
time. And they drafted, though, a left tackle.
Well,
you're right.
Expected to be a guard, Slater, yeah. So if you put Dillard at left tackle and Slater at guard, you just revamped your entire offensive line in one offseason.
It's not bad. Who's playing left tackle for them now?
I got to double check.
I mean, are they planning on playing Slater at left tackle? But if you got Dillard, you don't have to play him at left tackle, that kind of deal?
It might be, yeah. I think that would be an ideal situation for them. So that's a landing spot for you.
Man, 6 different guys played tackle for the Eagles last year. 6 different guys.
Including Jason Peters.
Who also played guard. How many different guys played guard? Matt Pryor, Nate Herbig, Sue Opeta, Isaac Seumalo. That's
Driscoll.
4. Jack Driscoll is 5. Did Luke Juriga get any snaps at guard?
He got snaps at center.
That's 5 different guys who played guard last year for you. 6 different guys who played tackle.
Yeah.
My
2 guys played center.
And you wonder why they won 4 games. Sports Bash. McGarry's on the other side. Tim Legler tonight at 5 will join me here on the Sports Bash, by the way. Brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. What did McGarry think of the play-in games last night, and which opponent is a better option for the Sixers? We got that, plus a big inning for the Phils. The Eagles are making signings all over the place. It looks like McGarry's on his way somewhere today, probably covering a high school baseball game near you. He joins me coming up next here on the Sports Bash. All right, the first night of the play-in was not as advertised. Those games were kind of non-competitive for the most part. We'll talk about the NBA playoffs and more. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City is back. And, of course, he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on a Wednesday show. Here we go. Michael, what's happening, man? There he is. McGarry, you got me. Maybe he doesn't have me. All right, we'll try to get him back on the line here and see if we can't get him fired back up. Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. It's funny because obviously you can see him. I can see him. You can't see him. If you're watching the show live, you can kind of see him and see that he is just kind of staring into the wilderness there, trying to get himself connected. So we will try to do that with Mike, and we will do that here in just a second. By the way, all right, so we were talking about the signing that the Eagles made today, LaRaven Clark. He's an offensive lineman, and the one thing is, obviously he played in the Colts. I was looking up some stuff in the break there, trying to kind of, do a little research here on the Eagles line situation. Yeah, they had 6 different guys play tackle last year for them. Brett Toth was one, Jordan Mailata, Jason Peters, Jack Driscoll, Lane Johnson, Matt Pryor. So those 6 guys all played left tackle last season for the Philadelphia Eagles. So we got that. All right, Mike McGarry, I think we're going to try to hit him up again here. Maybe if I don't know if he can hear me or not. This is one of those situations with the video thing. You don't know if he can actually hear you or not. So if he can exit out of the stream and then enter back into the stream. Are you able to hear me? Yeah, see, he can't kind of hear me. He kind of hear me. So if you just exit out of the stream, then enter yourself back in the stream, maybe we could try that and see if we can get that going up and running. But so there you go. You had 6 different guys play tackle last year. Now the guard spot we talked about, Suopeta, he played a game there. They had all sorts of different combinations there. So that's the one thing with what they got going now. They got Dickerson, who can play multiple positions on the line. They've got Clark now. The thing with Clark is the fact that he had this Achilles injury. He had an Achilles situation. And, he basically couldn't he might not be ready for the start of the season. And that is definitely something we're going to have to watch in training camp, because we all figure it's going to be Dillard against Mailata for the starting left tackle spot. And the 2 guys at left tackle, because the problem with Dillard is he only plays left tackle. If he's the backup at left tackle, he can't play. He's not a swing guy. He's not going to play right tackle for you. So that's another problem, is he only plays one side of the line. We already saw that he can't play right tackle. They tried that with him one time, and it was an absolute disaster. So the one thing you got to keep in mind with Dillard is other teams may value him. He was a first-round pick. He's a guy who the Eagles traded up for. So that is a weird scenario there. All right, Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. We got him on the phone, obviously. We were just talking before you jumped on, Mike, the value. This is an interesting. How do you kind of quantify when a general manager drafts a player and a new coaching staff comes in? What is the tie to that player? For instance, the Eagles drafted Andre Dillard in the first round, but that was a different. Now you have a new coaching staff. So does the guy who drafted them, the regime who drafted them, want him to play, or does the new coaching staff say, I don't have any ties to this guy? How does that kind of work out?
I think the new coaching staff says, I don't have any ties to this guy, and I'm going to get my own guys in there. And I'll give you an example, a real-life example where it's playing out right now. It's the Philadelphia Phillies with Scott Kingery, right? The previous regime, the Matt Klentak, Andy McPhail regime, gave Kingery that contract. It's in their best interest to make it work. Well, the Dave Dombrowski, Joe Girardi regime didn't give Kingery that contract. So they have no ties. They don't have to prove their judgment right. So they're not going to give Kingery every benefit of the doubt. So I think when a new regime comes in, it's exactly that. It's a new regime. They're going to develop their own guys, and commitments to past guys don't mean a whole hell of a lot. And we're seeing that play out firsthand with the Philadelphia Phillies right now.
All right. Well, you brought up the Philadelphia Phillies because that's a pretty good one there, that Kingery has no ties to Girardi really and Dombrowski. So they say, look, the previous regime made a mistake. Dillard, he was a first-round pick. He did not play at all last year due to injury. So it's not that we deem that he can't play, but he's not very versatile. You have Jordan Mailata, who you drafted in the 7th round, and that's kind of like a crown jewel is, hey, we found a guy in the 7th round. Like, that gives you, like, big-time kudos, right? So that don't you feel that will be one of the most interesting things to see if this 7th round pick beats this former first-round pick at that spot? Now, I don't know if you know the news. The Eagles did just sign a left tackle who played for the Colts. He's kind of a swing guy, but that kind of makes Dillard expendable, don't you think?
Well, it certainly doesn't, brings in more competition for him. I got to think, though, that with the Eagles, Howie Roseman is still there. So I think there's going to be a desire to find out exactly what they have in Dillard. You go back to the Scott Kingery example. Scott Kingery right now, batted 195 or whatever last season. He struggled this season to even make contact. So, you have a body of evidence there for the new regime that can judge. I got to think the Eagles, in one way or another, are going to want to see exactly what they have. And because, as you said, nobody's been able to really see him play because he's been injured. Now, that's another factor. The best of his availability. If he gets hurt against spring training or summer camp, maybe this is his last chance to sort of, impress the Eagles and make his mark there, and he can't do that if he's hurt. So, but I got to think one way or another, the Eagles are going to want to find out exactly what they have in Dillard. Well, because what are you going to do with him? No other NFL team is going to trade for him if they don't see him in action. So I think you're going to want to see him in action, see exactly what you have in him, and who knows? He might live up to that draft choice. Might not. He just hasn't had the opportunity yet.
It's interesting you say that because I was explaining how, somebody, he didn't play last year, so I don't know that he can get negative marks, but some front office might have said, hey, during the draft in 2019, we really like this guy. If we can go get him, we can get him at a cheap price. Hey, we'll give you a 4th-round pick for a guy that we thought was a 1st-round pick. So, like, if the Eagles are willing to take less than market value, that would be one way. But the other guy, Mike, is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who, I posted a story up about my 53-man roster predictions, and I have J.J. making it, and people are ripping me a new one because, J.J., I said, look, I don't like J.J. He hasn't done much, but he was a 2nd-round pick. You have a new regime in here who doesn't care what he didn't do in the past. They're saying, how can I get more than the previous regime did from this guy who was a 2nd-round pick? So how do you think they will view that? Do you think they will view him as a guy who can't play or a guy that why couldn't the previous regime get more from him?
Well, that's the flip side, right? What you're pointing out. That's the flip side of the new regime. New regime comes in and says, we have no ties to the guys that the old regime pledged allegiance to. The new regime comes in and says, we'll fix this guy. We'll make Jalen Hurts better than he was in the last 4 games. We'll get more out of this player. We'll get more out of not only Arcega-Whiteside, we'll get more out of Jalen Reagor. Maybe we'll fix John Hightower. Maybe we've got the answers here. So I think in an interesting way, it gives everybody sort of got a blank slate and a chance to sort of make an impression and for a guy like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who certainly has shown that he, I don't know if he's an NFL quality wide receiver, he has an opportunity to erase those 2 years because this new coaching regime is going to come in and say, we don't care what happened in the past. We're going to care what happens right in front of our eyes right now. And that's both good and bad.
Totally agree. The fact that, and Reagor too. And I think that Roseman, Mike, hinted at, we're excited about our staff, our new staff getting our hands. In other words, and this is kind of the tipping point is Roseman's not drafted well. Well, Roseman might say, I drafted well. The previous regime didn't develop very well, and we're about to find out.
Well, exactly, and that's what the Eagles are kind of telling you. And when they made Peterson sort of change his offensive staff before, after 2 seasons ago, and they wanted him to do it again after this season, that to me says, hey, we're not happy with the way your staff is coaching up our players. We might be happy with you. You won us a Super Bowl, but
Right.
We're not happy with the development of some of our offensive players. Therefore, we want you to make some changes. He doesn't make the changes, and he's gone. So now you got a new staff in here that they've handpicked. And again, the Eagles front office is the same. So they're saying, we picked the right players.
Yep.
We're just not getting them developed the way we thought they would be.
Well,
so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well put, Mike. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Check out his must-win column in the Press of AC. All right, Jason Tatum puts up 50 last night, but how many games do the Celtics get against Brooklyn?
Gentlemen's sweep, 5. The series goes out in 5 games. I think it's 4-1. Maybe the Celtics get that one game. You talk about the play-in games last night. I still love the concept. I'm hoping for a better game tonight, especially that Lakers-Golden State game. But last night's games, obviously 2 blowouts for the build-up. A little bit of a disappointment last night in the quality of the games. Like concept, but didn't like how side of the game was, basically.
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of a stinker, a couple of them. Real quick, I want to hit on a couple of topics here. Who's the better opponent for Philly, Washington or Indiana? The Pacers just beat them, and they can score a lot of points. They don't have the names that Washington does, but obviously Washington has the 2 bigger names. If you're Philly, who are you more concerned about?
I'm going to take Washington. I think Bradley Beal's not 100%, and I like Embiid better against Washington's front court than I do against the Pacers' front court. So I'll take Washington. But again, we talked about the gentleman's sweep with the Celtics and the Nets. I mean, the Sixers versus either the Pacers or the Wizards. That's another gentleman's sweep. That should be 5 games and done.
All right, Mike, you wrote about the Phillies in the Press of Atlantic City, and they clear the air. They come back. They scored 7 last night against their nemesis, but the rally starts again with Nick Maton. And I mean, where did this kid come from? And these kind of stories amaze me. Like, we talk about different regimes. This guy's not on any top 30 prospects. And he just comes out, and it's like, how did this guy fall through the cracks? But he's been a lot of fun to watch. But, as you wrote, they kind of cleared the air, and it looked like a stinker. And then, boom, in that 8th inning last night, everything just kind of changed. And you wonder if that's kind of the jumping-off point.
Yeah, you hope so. I'm not so sure myself. I think last night's win was big in a way. I think 42 games in, we kind of know what the Phillies are, right? They've got 3 really good starting pitchers. They've got some pop in the lineup. We also know what they are. Right? They're a horrible defensive team, and the back end of their rotation is inconsistent. So when you have a game where Zach Wheeler pitches the way he does last night, you can't afford to lose those games. So that's why last night's win was so big for the Phillies. They can't waste 10 strikeouts and no earned runs from Zach Wheeler. They've got to win every game he pitches like that if they are to contend.
Agree. He pitched very well. 10 strikeouts last night. He was dominant. The former Met, Zach Wheeler. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Where are you heading today?
I'm actually right now at the Farley Rest area on the beautiful Atlantic City Expressway, halfway between Atlantic City and Philadelphia. Actually finishing up a news story as we speak, and then headed up to catch the Fighting Phillies tonight in Game 2 of that series.
Nice.
See if they can carry over the momentum they built from last night.
All right. So check out Mike's stories and, of course, his must-win column and his coverage of the Phillies in tomorrow's Press of Atlantic City. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. All right, Mike, good conversation. Appreciate it, pal.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
Mike, as always, appears via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. It's funny how, Mike obviously has been a long time high school writer. He covers the Phillies and the Sixers and the Eagles for the Press of Atlantic City, kind of does it all for them. And people always say, man, you guys always mix it up on Twitter. You should start doing this on the air more. And we just decided, all right, let's bring it to the airways. And we always have fun. So we appreciate Mike for jumping on the show. When we come back, we got plenty more. Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers at 3:20.
BABBEL.com today. That's BABBEL.com.
A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got him!
WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
All right, here we go. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN on this Wednesday. The bad play-in games were yesterday, known as the Eastern Conference. The good ones should be tonight, we hope, although Memphis and San Antonio, nobody cares about either. It's really the late one that we got to stay up for, and Jay Fitz is here to kind of break it down for us. You know, the Celtics and the Wizards we thought was going to be a really good one. Didn't really live up to it. Why not? I said that neither team wanted to play Brooklyn. They'd rather just roll the dice and try to play the Sixers by winning the next game. Would you say that a team like Washington just said, we don't really care if we win this game or not. We'll try again on Thursday so we don't have to play Brooklyn? Or is that just way too tinfoil cap?
Well, look, I'd say that's more possible for Washington than it is for Boston, right? Because Boston has this narrative around they're underachieving this year. Washington's playing with house money, a team we all gave up on that then got hot at the right time. But yeah, I mean, we saw it with the Clippers. And frankly, you know, we talked to a few people on Spain and Fitz around the league about the Clippers' strategy of avoiding the Lakers. And they've said, hey, it's a good strategy. It's the right thing to do in this situation. Play to the matchup that you want. So if you are looking at it saying, hey, I know that I can lose this game and still get in, why not play to the matchup that you think you need out of it? So I don't think it's tin hat at all. It makes a lot of sense from a basketball standpoint to put yourself in the right situation.
You know, I brought that up yesterday here, and then I had people texting me like, hey, I thought you were an idiot at first, and now it looks like Washington really doesn't want to win this game. So, Jay, if you're Philadelphia, Indiana scored 144. They just beat you 2 weeks ago. Now, the Sixers didn't have Joel Embiid in that game. Or you got Beal and Westbrook, and they've played really good down the stretch. Which team has a better shot of knocking the Sixers off, if any shot at all?
I don't think either team has any shot at all, but I will say this. Whatever success Indiana had, I crumple up and I throw away like used toilet paper in this matchup because it's not the playoffs, and we know how different the playoffs are. Philly are one of the few teams that I think not only has played some defense, but also has a next level of defense they can offer out. When I get to playoff basketball, the thing that scares me are stars that can go off. And frankly, Washington has more stars that can go off. So that becomes a little bit more of a challenge. But this, to me, this series, this first round series for Philly is just a warm-up series. You're just getting your legs under you. You're getting ready because this Philly team looks to me like they're positioned to go on a nice run. And everybody's so Brooklyn obsessed they just don't want to talk about it, which is fine after years of having so much Philly hype. Like, live under the radar. Let's see where that goes for this team. But I think, frankly, Philly's in a great position coming into this playoff.
Yeah, Jay Fitz is with us, ESPN Radio, Spain and Fitz, weeknights here on 97.3 ESPN. Yeah, all right. The Sixers' path, to me, that's a game changer. Because if the Sixers are 2 or 3, they got no shot. They're not beating Milwaukee and the Nets, but they can beat one. If in a 7-gamer, I think they can ratchet up for a 7-gamer and beat one of them. So why their path is so important to their success here, it's monumental.
Yeah, well, because we're going to get a Milwaukee-Brooklyn series that is going to be great. And there is so much pressure on Milwaukee right now. Has Coach Bud done enough in the way he's changed the offense for Milwaukee? Can they get enough done with Drew Holiday, who's just been a delight of a signing, right, for Milwaukee? Like, we can look at Milwaukee and say, okay, they're using Giannis in the post more. Like, they're doing a lot of things differently. This is not the same Bucks team we saw last year. But that being said, this is a Bucks team with the weight of the world on their shoulders to get something done. And then you've got a Brooklyn team that's just all stars. So those two are going to get through a knockdown drag out. I think that has the shot to be the best series we see through all of the playoffs in either conference. And then you come hobbling out of that series, and guess what? Now you get to play a physical Philly team that can take it to you. You're going to have another layer to get to, and I just don't know that a lot of teams will have that. The matchup favors Philly to go to the finals just because I believe we're going to see Brooklyn and Milwaukee beat the junk out of each other.
Yeah, now I'll have Tim Legler tonight at 5:00. I know he likes Miami in that series. I mean, he thinks the Bucks. No, it's weird because all season it felt like the Bucks have kind of been under the radar after they were the 60-win team, and everybody was like, "I like that," and then they get matched up with Miami. I mean, some of these first-round matchups, that one, if you're Milwaukee, it's like, come on, this is really the one that we got stuck with.
Yeah, but I was also surprised Milwaukee didn't duck from it. They didn't tank down the stretch. They didn't try and find their way into
the Spurs.
A different seeding.
That Spurs loss killed them.
Yeah, 1,000%. So I'm looking at this Milwaukee team saying whatever we saw in the past is to some level not relevant this year. Because what did we see in past years? Giannis tries to do too much. Giannis doesn't have enough help. He's not being used in a way that seems at all like it's sustainable through a series. If you watch this year, they weren't doing that with them. So I'm looking at this total different version of the Bucks saying, hey, they're built right now. We love Miami because of what they did in the playoffs last year, and we don't love Milwaukee because of what they did in the playoffs last year. And I, for one, I'm not going to value playoffs in a bubble above what we just saw on a marathon season after a short turnaround for these teams. Like, I think this year's regular season has true meaning for once, far more than what we saw in a bubble last year in a weird year.
And by the way, this is a revenge series for the Bucks. They got knocked out by the Heat last year. Jason Fitz, Spain and Fitz here on 97.3 ESPN, weeknights at 7:00. All right, so Lakers Warriors. I mean, the NBA is getting it in a one game. I'm sure they would love for this to have been, a 1 versus 8 or a 2 versus 7. They're getting it as a 7 versus 8 here, but this is where the play-in became a win for them. I don't know that I love this play-in. We'll get to that in a minute, but is this an epic matchup here that is a must-watch, or is this one going to be like the other two last night and kind of be a letdown?
Look, I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a great game. But I also don't remember the last time I got this many texts in one day saying, where are you watching? What's the plan? Like, what's going on tonight? Everybody's vaccinated. People are feeling a little froggy, right? So now it's like, where are we going now? How are we watching this game? For a play-in game for two teams that would look in the mirror and tell you this was a disappointing season. And we understand why. I understand that injury played to both of them, a reason why this was the year it was. But it's a twisted logic if everyone says that this is why the play-in is great, because your point earlier was a valid one. Like, those games last night were not particularly good. The other game tonight, nobody really is anybody really going to be doing cartwheels to see the Grizzlies advance into this thing? Like, I love John Morant and I want to see a young Grizzlies team get a little experience, but that's not the reason the play-in's good. The play-in's good because the NBA got lucky, and two of the biggest brands that are heroes and villains all at once got into the thing in the Warriors and the Lakers.
All right, I want you to play TV executive for me, all right? So if the games on Sunday are the same as Saturday, 2, 4:30, 8, and 10:30, you got a lot of interesting scenarios here. You got the Knicks in the playoffs for the first time in 7 years. You got the Lakers, and you got the Warriors, and you got Philadelphia as the 1 seed. Now, Philly-Boston would have made it interesting for the execs, but the two Western opponents, Utah and Phoenix, are not as high profile. So, but you got to go Lakers, right? So they got a 2, a 4:30, an 8, and a 10:30. I would imagine the Lakers are getting that 8 o'clock Sunday night game, right?
Yeah, they have to.
The Lakers, or you giving that to the Lakers and either Utah or Phoenix, or the Knicks and Atlanta?
I'm putting Knicks Atlanta in that second slot of the day. So the mid-afternoon slot that lets them get both coasts, because it's the Knicks, right? And look, I think the Knicks thing is so overhyped right now. Like, here's what we saw. A team with no expectations. It turned out to be pretty good. Like, I wish we could let it be that simple, but the Knicks are back. Like, back to what? And what sustainably? Like, I mean, I'm sorry. Do we look at the Knicks and feel like they're on the same trajectory, not just this year, but in the next couple of years, to be better than Brooklyn, Philly, or Milwaukee? My answer is no. So,
let me ask you this, though. This is the first time they've been relevant in 7 years. can they finally get a free agent to suck? Because they haven't been able to get a free agent to go there because they suck so bad. But now they've made the playoffs. They're the 4 seed. Does a free agent finally say, all right, you've become respectable. I will now think about you?
Maybe. Yeah, I'll give you a maybe on that. But would that free agent be willing to go there above going to any of the other major? Like, there are just so many other markets right now that are going to always be more viable. Like, the Lakers will always find creative ways to get guys signed. The Clippers have proven that they're willing to spend the money to get Kawhi and Paul George. We just forget about Kawhi and PG being in the other LA team, right? And then Brooklyn has spent all of this money on all these superstars. Do we believe, and I know that it's tricky for the Celtics, they don't have an easy workaround to a lot of what they've dug themselves into, but do we believe the Celtics as a brand aren't still better than the Knicks as a brand? I don't. So, like, this is a great moment for the Knicks, but to be better than the other teams in the East, they're really going to have to build on something. And we thought that. Go ahead.
That being said, though, if the executives don't think they're going to get the Knicks again, you better take advantage of them while you got them, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. Look, the Knicks are going to get all the hype they can possibly get. And I really like the story. I would put the Knicks in that second slot because it serves both the West and East Coast for a national brand, right? And so the first slot goes to Philly, the second slot goes to the Knicks, the third slot goes to the Lakers, and the last spot goes to whatever West Coast game nobody really cares about. Like, let's be real. The worst case scenario for the NBA is that the Lakers and the Warriors somehow get bounced in this process, and we end up having to find a bunch of people that are NBA analysts that haven't watched enough of Phoenix, Utah, or Denver suddenly come out of the woodwork and say, I've been telling you about this team all. No, it's not true. So that's the worst case scenario for the league.
Yeah, so I'm imagining, because I got stuff I got to do on Sunday, so I'm trying to figure out when that Sixer game is going to be, and I'm feeling they're going to get the crap. They're the 1 seed, you get the 8, and now you're getting either Indiana, which is a terrible market, Washington's a decent market, but I feel like Philly, New York, LA, and the Warriors, you're getting the worst of that group. We always come out last. We always get the bottom of the barrel, man.
You're not wrong. But wait, the one thing that changes that, I don't know, raising a banner, right? Like, there's this spot where if I'm Philly and I'm Milwaukee, those are the two teams, I think, in the entire playoff system, Philly and Milwaukee, out of both conferences, are the two teams that can just sit back, put their feet up and say, all right, y'all, just keep hammering home every other brand, because those two teams are in a good situation to really make some noise. And by the way, if the Lakers aren't healthy, and there's no indication that will give us that they are going to be healthy, either of those teams from the East can and would beat the Lakers, in my mind, in a 7-game series for the final. So,
right, everybody thinks the Lakers are the favorite in the West. They might not even get into the damn playoffs, yet they're still the favorite. Like, if you want to bet them right now, one of my great sponsors is Prop Swap. I don't know if you've ever heard of these guys, but you can buy the ticket now and then sell it later on. I can buy the Lakers ticket right now. They might not even make the playoffs, and I can sell that, and someone's stuck with that ticket, and I make all the money. There, I prop swapped my ticket. The Lakers don't get in. But everybody thinks the Lakers are the favorite. But what other Western Conference teams can actually win it if they don't?
Yeah, well, the Clippers. I mean, I think the Clippers are at the top of that list. And again, we're just downfalling them for what we saw last year. So I like the Clippers a lot. And frankly, look, I know the Suns are a young team, but what Chris Paul has done this year has been absolutely phenomenal. And what do you need in playoff basketball, right? Like, you need somebody that can come out there and essentially be your point, that knows what he's doing and where he's been. So I think that, we're sleeping on Phoenix as being the other team. Like, to me, the Clippers and Phoenix are 1-2 in the West if the Lakers aren't healthy. If AD and LeBron are healthy, though, at the end of the day, their 2 is better than everybody else's 5. And that's the gross part of this. Like, they didn't build for depth and they don't care. They didn't build a proper basketball team and they don't care. They got the 2 best players that they could out of 5 and said, you know what, our 2 will beat your 5 every day. And so far they've been right.
Weren't you hoping for a Wizards Nets so you could see Westbrook Durant for probably 4?
All day, every day, and 7 times on Sunday. Like, I want that all day. Like, that's what we want, is the drama. By the way, though, that does speak to something. What you just mentioned, we spent so much of the last few years talking constantly about where teams are going and what the offseason is going to be like and what players not going to sign where. This year has actually given us interesting things on the court and interesting drama on the court that we can talk about with the games for once. Like, I think this has been a big win for the NBA this year.
ESPN radio host Jason Fitz, Spain and Fitz. Now, I was listening to you guys. I think it was Friday of last week, and maybe it was 2 weeks ago. You were doing like a draft of teams that you like didn't care about getting rid of. One was like the White Sox, one was the Cardinals, and then one of the reasons was about like the fans at the Cardinals, or one of the games was like mean to you or something, or like rude.
Orioles. Orioles. I got told to
game.
sit down at a Baltimore game because I was cheering too loud. Yeah,
Orioles.
So they're off my list.
It was the Orioles. And then last night I'm watching the Phillies game, and twice in the same inning, a Yahoo runs on the field. And I'm thinking, I just kept thinking, and you know, Sarah took a little shot at the Phillies and at the Philadelphia, and everybody plays along. But then I said, man, I'm wondering if Fitz saw the two guys run on the field last night at the Phillies game twice in the same inning.
Yeah, well, look, we're going through a Major League Baseball bachelor process. Sarah wants me to become a big-time fan of one team. So I'm going through a selection process. You know, somebody's going to get the final rose. But the Phillies are still in this thing. Like, I'm not saying that, like, the mascot alone is going to keep Philly in this thing for a long time. I am transparent. Like, if the ballpark food is good, the mascot's good, the unis look good, like, you're going to make my list. So they've got a lot going for.
Great food. And by the way, you know how many marriages happened because of Ashburn Alley back there? Like 2008, 9, 10, 11. Man, there's a ton of families that were created from Ashburn Alley. Keep that in mind when you put that together. And by the way,
plus proximity matters too. Like, I intend with my final cities to get ESPN to, you know, pay to send me there so I can party for a weekend. Like Philly, I want to go party in Philly. Let's go.
Oh yeah, and then of course we're Atlantic City. We're only 45 minutes away. I mean, this is you got to keep that all in mind. When's the new Bachelorette start?
You know what? Don't tell Sarah this. I've never watched The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. I'm still not 100% sure which one gives where the guy wins or the girl wins. I don't know. And I even hosted a show with Jordan Rogers, you know, when I first got to ESPN. And I was like, so, dude, you were on one of those shows, and I'm sorry, I don't know which one it was. And he's like, that's okay. I don't listen to country music, so we're batting 1,000 because I've never heard any of your trash music. So there we go. And we've been friends ever since.
At Jason Fitz, he is, of course, the co-host of Spain and Fitz. You can hear right here on 97.3 ESPN. Jay Fitz here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. All right, man. Good to see you.
Have a good.
All right, there he goes. And we, of course, appreciate him jumping on board. But when we come back, we will get into the matchup. Washington, Indiana. Which one gives the Sixers more problems? And can the Celtics make it a series? We'll ask Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider, coming up next. .322 Sports Bash. Somebody commented that Utah is at the top of the list of the most disrespected brands right now. We got a lot to dive into after last night. And then, of course, then there were two. Paul Hudrick's here, and we'll get his take on the two teams that are left to face Philadelphia on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on Facebook and YouTube. There he is, Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider here from 97.3 ESPN.com. What's going on, Paul?
Just living the dream, Mike. You know me, man.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, last night you got Indiana 144 without LeVert, scored all over the place. They just beat the Sixers 2 weeks ago. Washington did not look good last night, shot it very poorly in that game. So let's get from you, which is the better matchup for Philly? Washington, Indiana, and I don't know if those two games last night factor in at all.
I'll say they factor in this regard. Bradley Beal did not look like Bradley Beal last night, and I can't imagine he's going to look like Bradley Beal for the next playing game, or if they manage to win that game, if he's going to look like Bradley Beal in a first-round playoff series. So that might be the reason why I would prefer the Washington Wizards. Also, just the Embiid matchup. Not to say Sabonis is going to shut Embiid down by any stretch, but I imagine that Indiana as a team would play better defense against Joel Embiid, would maybe be a tougher matchup for him. I mean, given the preference of the two, I guess at this point I'm actually saying Washington.
Wow.
But at the same time, I don't think either is easy. You are correct that Indiana did lose LeVert, and he's likely not going to play, in Friday's or Thursday's game, and may miss some time going into the first round. But they still have Malcolm Brogdon. They still have Sabonis. They still have some talented players. They still have some. T.J. McConnell, say what you want about him. The one thing he does well is he pressures guards, and that's the one thing that a guy like Shake Milton has really struggled against is kind of that ball pressure. So. In that regard, Indiana may not be the best matchup. At the same time, I could see Washington, like, who knows with Bradley Beal's hurt right now, but he could still go out there and kind of light it up. Same with Westbrook. Westbrook was not very good against Boston. He had a bad night, like flat out. And so Boston took advantage of that. But Russell Westbrook could go off for a game or two.
Yeah.
And I think you saw the danger with the Celtics is just Tatum. When he gets hot, that was the only way, Mike, I saw the Celtics winning that game was if Tatum went nuts, and Tatum went nuts. But to get back to your original question, I would think that Washington is a slightly better matchup for the Sixers.
Yeah, you look at Washington's roster. I mean, as much as when you look at Brooklyn, it's like they got Durant, they've got Harden, they've got Kyrie, they've got a nice drop-off. Washington has Beal and Westbrook, and then a significant drop-off, especially if Bertans is only going to shoot 1 for 8, 0 for 7 from.
They had a rough night from three in general, the whole team.
And really, I mean, who's their third guy, really?
Bertans. Hachimura, when he got in foul trouble last night, so unfortunately we didn't get to see kind of his full game. He's actually had a pretty nice second season. That's probably it's Hachimura or it's Bertans.
I mean,
sometimes it's been Ish Smith. Ish Smith has actually played pretty well for them.
Rolling Ish Smith get major minutes. They play. I mean, Neto gets big minutes when he's healthy for them. That kind of shows you how limited. So when you get a chance to watch, like a lot of people don't watch Washington, they're seeing, well, this team's been playing pretty good. They got Westbrook, they got Beal. That's scary in itself. If you actually watch them, they don't have a whole heck of a lot else. They play less defense than a team of me, you, Blevins, McCormick, and Henning would play.
Right. Yeah, and that's when you look at Indiana, I think, the guys that they're missing, that's the big reason why they are where they are. Because, you look at Miles Turner, you look at LeVert, TJ Warren, who, I think he played like 3 games this season, but he was so good in the bubble. We saw what he did against the Sixers. That's a guy who can score the basketball. So they're kind of missing more of those guys, I feel like. I mean, Turner is obviously a very good shot blocker, but they're missing a lot of scoring. They still have guys that are going to play defense. They're still going to play tough. They're going to play hard. And I think that's, to your point about Washington, They have Sabonis, they have Brogdon, they still have Justin Holiday. They don't. It's the drop off isn't maybe as big as it is with Washington, where it's Beal, Westbrook, and then name a guy after that. It's maybe not quite as drastic with Indiana, and they have guys that will play defense, that are hungry, that will play hard. So I think that's the difference, and that's maybe why it's. Listen, I mean, in any case, the Sixers should beat either team. It's just a matter of maybe Indiana could give them win a game or two and give them a slightly tougher series, maybe give Embiid a slightly harder time.
Well, you just don't want, like last night, Indiana, they shot the ball really well. I mean, they scored 144 points in the game. They shot, like 45% from 3-point range. You don't want to get a game early in the series where that ends up happening and then the doubt starts to get in. But I thought when Indiana played Philly a couple of weeks ago, Philly's up in the third. They're pretty much, holding them off. And I thought Indiana did a good job of making some changes defensively. Now the Sixers didn't have Embiid in that game, but I thought they did a good job in that game defensively in the fourth quarter. That really changed the game. And then LeVert makes that big three late and kind of put it away. But they definitely are a team that I think doesn't have the flashiness name-wise as Washington does, but is probably a better overall team than the Wizards are. All right, Paul, Boston got a shot to win a game or two.
Maybe. It would have to be the same scenario we saw last night. If Jason Tatum goes for 50 points and Kemba Walker comes close to 30, they might win a game or two, but he's like, you know what I mean? They have no shot to win the series. I can't imagine. Like, Tatum would have to just have a Kawhi Leonard against the Sixers type series against the Nets for them to have any remote shot. Yeah,
this is like one of those things where I guess, can Brad Stevens, he's always been the coach with the underdog team. That's where he's excelled. Like, hey, I don't have this good a team. He devises up some, defensive masterpiece that takes the three guys somehow out and makes Shamet and that guy, who else is even on that
Joe
team?
Harris.
Right. Those guys beat
Jeff
you.
Green. Yeah.
I don't see it either, but I'm saying, I guess that's does Boston have enough to make that series interesting? Probably not. It's probably a sweep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there might be one game or even two, who knows, where Jason Tatum just goes nuts, and that it's enough to overcome the fact that, listen, they're just not a good defensive team, the Celtics. They've been a bad defensive team all season long. And you saw in the fourth quarter, to defend Brad Stevens a little bit, in the fourth quarter, he's got to play Romeo Langford and Aaron Nesmith in the fourth quarter. And he won. That's a game that they needed desperately, and he had to play those guys. Robert Williams got banged up, so they're on top of already missing Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams being banged up, and then just the fact that they, even when those guys were healthy, they weren't a very good defensive team. So you take those two out of the equation, and that's what it is. They just don't have the horses. Brad Stevens can scheme it up all he wants, but to stop those three guys, you need horses, and they just don't have them.
Yeah, I'm Legler will join me tonight. I know he likes Miami in the series. I've seen him say that on SportsCenter. Give me your thoughts on Miami and Milwaukee.
I think Miami could for sure win that series. I think they have
beat them last year in the playoffs.
100. Yeah, I will say this. That is true, and that's going to give Miami for sure.
Did we flip to where, look, it's all season. Miami just who they are to they're better than we've been giving them credit for.
The last couple weeks of the season, when they started to get a little healthy, I think that's when, and Jimmy Butler kind of turned it up a notch. Bam Adebayo turned it up a notch. I think that's where that's where the narrative kind of flipped. And it's fair. Like, yeah, are they a better team than they've probably shown throughout the year? Yeah, because quite frankly, Mike, they weren't good for most of the season. They have not been a good basketball team. I get they've had a lot of health issues. They've done a lot with the health and safety protocols. They make a trade for Oladipo. That doesn't work out at all. He has to get surgery. They lose a guy in Olynyk, who looked great for Houston down the stretch, who has been better than Bielitsa, who they traded for. So, some kind of misfortunes there along the way. But, Ariz has played pretty well for them. He's a guy that kind of fits that Jay Crowder role. That Jay Crowder was very good for them last year, and he kind of is slipping into that role. I will say, though, I don't want to go ahead. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I think the Heat are definitely going to win this series. The Bucks are better. I think a couple things. One, I think the Bucks are a better team than they were last year. Jrue Holiday, first and foremost. Now they get to throw Jrue Holiday on Jimmy Butler. Are you kidding me? Like that's night and day, the difference that makes. Right. And then on top of that, they have a better, I wouldn't say better bench, but they have a different bench. Portis is going to be an interesting matchup for them. Bam Adebayo is going to have to go out in the perimeter and defend him. Not to say he can't. Of course he can. But that's, it's a different dynamic, I think, than last year. Giannis is a better player, I think, than he was last year. Bam Adebayo, again, did an outstanding job against Giannis last year. But Giannis is not the same player. I would say offensively, I think Giannis is actually a slightly better player. I think he kind of took a step back defensively, if anything, this season. And you still got Middleton, who's a solid player. But I would say that
get the Middleton yet.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They have that Milwaukee team is a good team, man. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I think the Heat. And then not only that, Mike, I don't think it can be discounted. Like the Bucks know they lost last year in a weird situation in that bubble and everything going on. And the Heat, for whatever reason, it really galvanized them, that bubble, and they really came together and played really good basketball. But if you don't think that that's on the Bucks' mind, what happened last year, like you don't think that's going to be a factor, that's 100% going to be a factor. So I would actually, if anything, I would kind of lean towards the Bucks. But with that said, Miami is a better team than what they've shown in the regular season, and they got a shot 100% to win that series.
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned Drew Holiday. I just think he's such a difference maker over Eric Bledsoe, who was abysmal
Not even close.
year. Not even close. Abysmal Bledsoe was in those playoffs. Holiday is fantastic. So I thought it was such an underappreciated, under the radar move by them, because they tried to get
they tried to get him and Bogdanovich.
Right. And then when Bogdanovich didn't end up going there, it was like, that kind of stinks. They got Drew Holiday, they got Giannis, and they already had Middleton. And Lopez was a great, not as good this year as he was last year, I don't think, but still a nice, they got a nice. That Bucks team is definitely. I feel like everyone's either Nets or Sixers, and then you have this little tiny part of people are like, oh, that Bucks team is a lot better this year. We'll see. That series should be a lot of fun because Miami could beat them, and then that could be chaos and should be fun. All right, give me your kind of thoughts on what's going to happen with this Lakers-Warriors tonight. Are we going to get a game like last night where this play-in game turns into a massive disappointment, or are we going to get what everybody's hoping for, this epic one-game showdown?
It 100% depends on Steph Curry. If Steph Curry just has one of those nights that we've seen him have a lot of during the second half of the season, and he goes for like 50 points, this could be a game. If the Lakers defend him well, or he just has an off night, maybe just doesn't have one of those kind of epic kind of nights, I think the Lakers kind of run away with it because I just think the Lakers are a flat out much better basketball team. So I think that's what it depends on. It's going to depend. Steph's got to go supernova, which he is more than capable of doing. If he does that, we got ourselves in a basketball game and a really good one. If he doesn't, then I think the Lakers the Lakers should be, I think, are the better team and should come out on top.
All right. That game tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN, that would make the Lakers the 7, and they would play Phoenix. That would mean the Warriors would play the winner of the Memphis-San Antonio game. And by the way, Memphis, it's just because it's Memphis. Nobody really realizes, but that team, people think of San Antonio sometimes as that team that was always good, made the playoffs all those years in a row. Certainly not the same, but they're still interesting with DeRozan, but Ja Morant. That's a very young Memphis team. I like Memphis in the early game.
It's I would probably lean towards Memphis, but you can't count out that San Antonio team because they do have you named like DeRozan is a guy who again can go off at a moment's notice. He's just a really high level NBA scorer. Keldon Johnson's a guy who's really developed his game. They have a lot of young guys who I think have really Derek White. You mentioned DeJounte Murray. I mean, they have guys that can really play. It's just they've also they've dealt with injuries and they're also still a young team. So I think Memphis and San Antonio are actually a lot more similar than maybe we think.
Yeah.
So that could be an intriguing matchup. But again, when you have like a superstar guy like a Ja Morant, like he's a guy again who could just take a game over, whether it's scoring or whether it's facilitating on either end. He's a guy that could really take a game over. So it's I think those teams are a lot closer matched than maybe people think. And I think that could be a really competitive game. I truly do.
Oh, it's going to be. I think that one might be of the 4, may end up being the best because it's the least anticipated. But if Memphis makes the playoffs, they would be the youngest playoff team since the Thunder team that had Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. You're going back 10 years at 24 years of age. That is the average age. And they have the second lowest amount of playoff games on their roster. The only team that has less is the Timberwolves. They only have 112 games of playoff experience on their entire roster. So that's a very inexperienced Memphis team. But for those of you out there who haven't seen a lot of Memphis, they're a lot of fun. Valanciunas has been fantastic for them. For those of you who don't even
Underrated
remember
guy. He
in
really
Memphis,
is.
Absolutely. And of course, Ja Morant is a lot of fun. All right, Paul Hudrick, the Sixers. What is your prediction for game time Sunday? I think the Knicks game is at 2. I think I did see a little slippage.
Okay.
I did see if you go to DraftKings, they have a line on that game and it says Sunday.
If I'm guessing, if I'm being, it's I would imagine the Sixers aren't going to get a great slot. Like I imagine it's a non-prime slot because they're not anticipating that. Like if it's Sixers Pacers, for us, yes, that's very.
I was talking about this yesterday. If it was Sixers Boston, which is a traditional historic, but you got the Knicks, the Lakers, and the Warriors all playing possibly on the same day as you.
Sure. Right. So I mean, no matter what, they're probably getting, if there's like a 12:30 game, like I can see them getting
Saturday,
that. Yeah.
Saturday doesn't have the 12:30 game. They're going 2, 4:30, 6:30, or
right.
2, 4:30, 8, and 10:30. I don't know if Sunday is going to follow the same suit, but I would imagine
it would be earlier. Yeah.
I would imagine that the Sunday game you could get a 12:30, 2 or 2:30 tip or something like that, and then 2 West Coast games at night. So you might get an early Sixer game on a day that's supposed to be gorgeous out. Man,
right. It might happen.
Man. All right.
But at least it'll be done early. It'll be done early, and then you got the rest of your night.
Yes, and by the way, I did send a text message up there, and it looks like it could be multiple of us in that building.
That would be wonderful. I would very much enjoy that.
Yes, they are trying to. A little birdie said that they might try to help me out. Considering I haven't been to a game all year, this is the first time I've been to a game.
We offered in our defense.
I know.
We offered.
Well, I'm saving it for the playoffs, All right, man. We might see you Sunday.
Sounds good, man.
All right, Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick on Twitter, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Paul and Kevin do a great job, and Jay covering the 76ers for our website, 973ESPN.com. And, of course, the Sixers playoff games can all be heard right here on 97.3 ESPN. Sunday, we believe our guess is that they will play either noon, 12:30, somewhere in that range on Sunday, or 4:30. That would be the guess right now. Okay? So try to keep that in mind when you're making your weekend plans. Hey, got to watch a Sixer game. This is going to be the run. Remember the last time they had a run? 2000, 2001. It might have been the most fun we had. That was one of the best summers of all time. Every other night of the week, the Sixers were playing big shots. Allen Iverson, Game 7, Bucks, Raptors. Give it to us again. I'll take it. All right, Mosher at 4. Do you remember? Legler at 5. Kerr at 5:25. I'm Mike Gill. When asked about competition today, Jalen Hurts had an epic answer. And I'll play more sound from Jalen Hurts meeting with the media today. And when you hear it, you'll say, much in the words of T.O., that's my quarterback. You'll hear it coming up in just a minute here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. But first, I want to tell you about DraftKings. You guys know by now that DraftKings Sportsbook is my sportsbook of choice, and it's playoff time, big stakes, bigger promotions, and it's time to have the over and the score and get some more cash. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving you a chance to lower the over-under on a featured playoff game. Every night they're doing this. You know, I went on there last night. You can go down there and lower the over-under on the game, the featured game of the night. Every 1,500 players have bet the over. So we got a bunch of people listening out there today. You go bet the over, all right? Every time someone bets the over on that select game, the over-under will drop by 1 point. Every bettor who hammers the over in the featured game helps lower the game's over-under. The best part is that as the line lowers, the odds remain at even money. So you could double your money by hammering the over. DraftKings, safe, secure, reliable. Deposit, withdraw your funds at your convenience. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use my promo code 973 when you hammer the over. For every 1,500 people that bet the over in the featured game, the line will decrease by 1 point. Yes, this is your chance to improve the odds of the over hitting. So tell your friends and family this is a team effort. Then you can all root on points. Hammer the over and improve your odds of doubling your money. Promo code 973 for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey only. Restrictions apply. The max wager is $25. One per customer. Offer ends 5/23/21. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, so Jalen Hurts, there's been so much. Did you guys see the Pro Football Focus ranked all 32 starting quarterbacks in the league? And I will get into that as well. Pro Football Focus did quarterbacks, the tight ends, the wide receivers, and the running backs. And I'm sure they'll do the rest. They ranked Jalen Hurts 31 out of 32 quarterbacks, which is preposterous. I mean, he's ranked below guys like Daniel Jones. He's ranked below. I mean, I'm not saying that Daniel Jones shouldn't be ahead of him. Maybe Daniel Jones should be ahead of him. But Daniel Jones was like in the 20s, like not like right in front of him. He's ranked below Zach Wilson and Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, guys who've never taken a snap before. I get it. Hurts has only played 4.5 games. He's ranked below Tua. What has Tua done? He's ranked below Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's ranked below a lot of players in this league. He was the 31st ranked quarterback by the list. It was Bruce Gradkowski, who, by the way, played quarterback in the NFL. So it's not like some schmuckaroni who's just writing this story, and it's a guy who played quarterback in the league who's looking at Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts today is a guy that when you hear him talk, it is hard for you not to say, this is a guy that I have confidence in. This is a guy that I think can help the Eagles out.
Sirianni coming in, preaching connection, preaching accountability and competition and fundamentals and football IQ, preaching all these things. And I know in all of those different avenues, all those different values and principles that we're, trying to instill here in Philly, no one is above that. And everybody got to go to work, So for me, I know rent is due every day. It's always been that way for me. Always been a get better mentality every day, grow every day, be a better leader every day, be a better quarterback every day. And when that rent's due, I don't plan on missing no payments. So it's work.
There you go. There's your starting quarterback. Every day the rent is due. But what did he say? It's exactly what I've been saying here. He said, every day become a better leader. And he put that in front of being a better quarterback. You might not like that. You might want the guy who's the better quarterback. You can be both. But being the leader first and foremost, that is a very big key. Listen to what else Jalen Hurts said earlier today.
I value everything that coaches brought here. I remember back in my days at Alabama, Coach Saban, hearing him talk about discipline, commitment, effort, toughness, and pride, having these core values that he's trying to instill in the team. And in the end, it all worked out for the team. You know, you see Coach Nick Sirianni coming in, preaching connection, preaching accountability and competition. And
accountability and competition. Preaching accountability and competition. You cannot get past the fact that Sirianni has put that out there and that his starting quarterback has said, I've already been through this. There was a guy that I played for named Nick Saban, and he instilled that in me. There is not a lot that you can say that you don't like about Jalen Hurts. You might think that, hey, he doesn't have the greatest skill set. He needs to complete a higher percentage passes, or his style doesn't work in the NFL. But one thing that you have to be excited about is that you're not going to get a guy who's not going, that the moment's going to be too big for. That's for sure. You know, when he looks at all of his back obstacles, Alabama, moving to Oklahoma, the only thing that Jalen Hurts ever knows is how to win. That's all he's ever done. And people can say all they want about his skill and this and that. Jalen Hurts, when he went to the combine, people talk about his arm strength and this and that, ill-informed. Jalen Hurts throws the ball with the same velocity as Justin Herbert. Hurts has a fine arm. Hurts is not a guy. See, when people say, oh, you can't win with a running quarterback, then you don't know Jalen Hurts, because that is ill-informed. Jalen Hurts is not a run-first quarterback. He's not one of these guys that has this tremendous speed. But what he does is much like a Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but he has the ability to elude. He has the ability to move around the pocket. He has the ability to extend plays. He's not a running quarterback. And people say, oh, you wins with the RPO. Well, there's a guy named Mahomes. He wins with an RPO. There's a lot of teams in this league that have gone in that direction. Yeah, there's a guy named Tom Brady who has not gone in that direction yet or ever. But even a guy like Aaron Rodgers, they run pretty much an RPO style of offense. That's where this league is gone. You have to get a guy, unless you have Tom Brady, that can make plays with his feet. You have to have guys who can elude and get out of the pocket. I think Jalen Hurts, and this goes back to what we talked about yesterday with Rob Motti. The development of the younger players, I think, is certainly something that we can start wondering about with the Peterson regime. We keep saying how he did a poor job drafting, how he did a horrible job drafting. He didn't do a bad job drafting before the Peterson regime. So, again, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. Did Peterson do a poor job developing younger players? Or did they do a poor job drafting? Because if all of a sudden we see players like Jalen Reagor, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and others contribute this year, you're going to look back and say, hey, Peterson did a great job with the veteran talent on this team. But he didn't do a very good job with the younger players. And was that because they weren't good players, or did he just not do a good job developing? And I think Jalen Hurts is one of those guys that we're going to find out. He went out there and basically played with his own skill set. I don't know that he was developed all that much to get put out on the field last year. I think he just went out and played. This will be interesting to see if Nick Sirianni and this staff work with Jalen Hurts to help with some of the things that got him ranked 32nd on that list, which was some decision-making. I don't want to say inaccuracies, because a lot of his throws, Josh read the stat about a week or so ago, that a lot of the incomplete passes that Hurts threw that can attribute it to his completion percentage was just throwaways, him running for his life. You know, Jeff Kerr just tweeted this out, and of course, Geoff will join us tonight on 525 from CBS Sports, who covers the NFL. The most pressures allowed last year in the league, Philadelphia, 271. The next closest team, 253. All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bets. Geoff Mosher is here. The Eagles make another, I would say, minor signing today, but a little interesting to dive into. They made a trade yesterday. They made a signing on Monday, so they kept all the beat guys busy, and they keep us busy as well. Jalen Hurts spoke today. I like what I've heard from him as well, and Geoff Mosher joins us now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline for another edition of Football at 4. What's going on, Moshe?
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, you're right. The Eagles are keeping us busy, even in the, some teams, Mike, and the Eagles in the past, they kept you busy in March, the first 2 weeks of free agency. Now we're busier in May.
Boy, they are
I
really
kind of like it that way.
They are really following the blueprint from 17, aren't they? Like, hey, let's wait as long as we can, find some guys under the radar that people aren't really thinking are going to help us all that much. So let's start with LaRaven Clark. For those of you who don't know who that is, he played with the Colts. He was a third-round pick. Now, he has a torn Achilles, so I don't even know if he's going to be healthy enough to play. But I find this signing, sneakingly interesting, Geoff, because he's a swing tackle. He's played guard. He knows Sirianni's offense, obviously. And I guess it makes a guy like Dillard more expendable.
It could possibly make a guy like Dillard more expendable, certainly because LaRaven Clark plays tackle. He can play tackle. He's built like a tackle, has both tackle and guard experience, but I think his natural position is tackle. And you're right. You look at the situation now and you see, wow, you've got Jordan Mailata can play tackle. You've got Andre Dillard, of course, who's a tackle. LaRaven Clark is a tackle. Jack Driscoll is someone who had played tackle for them last year, right tackle. Lane Johnson plays tackle. And then Brett Toth and Casey Tucker, some of these guys who are fringe roster and probably won't make it, but can still play tackle. And whenever you have that kind of surplus and you have an aggressive GM like Howie Roseman, I do think signs indicate that it could lead for Howie to want to trade Andre Dillard if a good deal came around and if they were convinced Jordan Mailata was going to win left tackle moving forward. But it is also hard to read too much into LaRaven Clark because, as you just mentioned, coming off the Achilles, I can't imagine he'll even be able to start practicing until August, right? Because it's usually 9 months from the injury. The injury happened in December, but they must feel fairly confident that he'll come back in pretty good form. Now, he wasn't exactly Jason Peters.
No.
But he doesn't necessarily have to be the top backup either at offensive tackle, even if they did trade Andre Dillard because of the what they've stockpiled there throughout the off seasons.
Geoff, they played 6 different guys at tackle last year, right? I mean, 6 different players got to start at one of the tackle positions last year. So this obviously just adds to that. And as you mentioned, the Dillard thing I find fascinating, mainly because, one, he did not play last year. So it's really hard to quantify who he even is as a player. He has very little experience. But here's what I want to pick your brain on and what you know from talking to personnel people.
Mm-hmm.
You have a GM who drafted him in the first round, traded up to get him. You have a coaching staff who has no ties to this guy. Who wins that battle?
Well, it depends. It may not have to be a battle if the GM himself even recognizes that maybe the pick wasn't the best pick, or that if the GM himself can say, hey, the guy I picked 2 years prior in the 7th round is now going to be our starting left tackle. So that's a feather in my cap as well. And I'm talking about Jordan Mailata there. So I don't know that ego is really going to get in the way here. I think value is the question. I just don't know if Howie Roseman's going to flip him for a 6th rounder just to get him off the roster. You know, I think that
right.
that there's enough question marks so that it's hard to get a first or I would think a first or a second back in return or the same kind of currency you put in, but there's still a limited enough sample size. It's not like they reached. I mean, he was a 1st round tackle.
Right, but so talking to personnel people, he hasn't played, but there's got to be people who said, hey, look, I scouted this guy in 2019 and we had him as the 20th pick in the draft or the 30th pick in the draft. There's got to be some front office who says, look, I don't have a lot of tape on him in the NFL either, but when we were scouting him in college, we really liked him a lot.
Yeah, I asked around about that pick back when it happened, even a year after, and the one thing that people would say is that while he was kind of anywhere in the mid-late 1st round. Some people had early 2nd, and they did note that was not the best offensive line draft as far as tackles. He went 22nd. I'm trying to think. I think he was the first offensive tackle taken in that draft at 22nd. So that just tells you right there. Usually you see tackles going 5, 10, 15, the elite ones. And then right after him, the Texans took Titus Howard, who was a small school Alabama State project tackle. So, and those were the only 2 tackles drafted that year in the first round. And I remember the following year, kind of, 'cause it's a year later, he didn't have the greatest rookie year, asking about guys who were going to go in the first round, like Jedrick Willis or Mekhi Becton, Andrew Howard, those names. And those guys had a more favorable rating. That scouts felt that those guys were more projected to be elite than, say, Andre Dillard. So again, the Eagles took him 22nd. It's not like they traded up top 10,
right,
but it was a weak class. So you can see the luster kind of coming off a little bit. And certainly there were questions from pro scouts about his toughness. The footwork was not an issue. The dancing bear type quality of being able to move and pivot, not an issue at all. The athleticism is absolutely there. The toughness and the physical grind, the ability to withstand a really good bull rusher was definitely questioned about him.
Well, and keep in mind, he was drafted for a different coach, different system. He was not known as a run blocker. I can tell you that, coming out of
Correct.
Washington State. Now you have a coach who, hey, he might rely on the run a little bit more. So the front office might say, hey, we drafted him for an offense that's no longer here, and be more apt to say we're willing to part ways with him, which brings me to another guy who's similar. I posted a story with my 53-man roster projection, which is very early, and I have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside making it, to which I'm getting flamed by people. How can you keep this guy as 148 yards in 2 seasons? And I said, he was a second-round pick, and another coaching staff is going to say, what did the other regime not get out of him? What can we do to get more? And that's another guy that you wonder, is Roseman going to be ready to give up on this guy, or is the new coaching staff going to say, look, we can get something out of him? I find it JJ is going to be a very interesting guy, because this is now going to be his 3rd year. So are you ready to cut ties with a second-round pick after 2 seasons of failure, when it seems that the GM feels that the previous regime didn't develop these younger players as well as they would have liked?
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. I also think that the GM has pretty much openly said that they've made some mistakes in the past few drafts about reaching. So I'm not sure that he looks at the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside pick and solely blames Doug Peterson and the talent development there. I think he understands that pick was controversial for a reason, and maybe not the best pick for other reasons as well. You're right that he gets a clean slate with a new coaching staff. The problem is it becomes a numbers game. It becomes a position game. Like he is an X receiver. It's been hypothesized by some, and I can see it, that he might be even better in the slot, where he's closer to the ball. He's not a downfield weapon. The problem is the Eagles already have a fairly reliable slot receiver in Greg Ward, who's not explosive and not going to give you much downfield. So you would like J.J. Arcega to really shine at the X position, but they have guys there. I mean, Devontae can play some X. Jalen Reagor can play some X. Travis Fulgham is going to get a chance to improve from last year and show that maybe that last month and a half was a fluke. I mean, he's going to get an opportunity. And J.J. Whiteside does not really contribute on special teams. So if he's not going to make the roster as a top 3 or 4 wide receiver, then I don't see a role for him, because they're not going to keep him on the team or have him ride the bench and not play special teams.
Yeah.
So can he crack that top 4? Well, you got Devontae, you got Reagor, and then you got a bunch of guys between Hightower and Watkins and Ward and Fulgham that he's going to have to compete with. So it's going to be difficult.
Oh, yeah. There's and a lot of people like the kid Grimes as well. So there's a room, and there are a lot of young guys. It's not like they have a lot of experience in that room. JJ has the most experience of them all. I mean, this is going to be his 3rd year with Greg Ward. He's the elder statesman of this group, believe it or not. So keep that in mind as well. I think that's going to be very interesting. All right, Geoff, let's get – by the way, somebody texted in and wants to know, what's the ceiling of compensation you think they would get for Dillard?
Whew. That's really hard to say,
because him and Ertz now are the two, and Ertz doesn't seem like there's a market. So if you're trying to make a trade, Dillard seems to be at the top of that list of a guy that you can pawn off.
Yeah, I want to say somewhere most likely late day 2, early day 3, somewhere 3rd, 4th, 5th round. I mean, it all depends on the desperation of the team at the time. If you lose a guy in training camp,
desperation. That's a position where people need offensive line help. If you give me a 1st round pick left tackle, I'm listening.
So I would guess that a trade like that, because of his limited playing time, but yet high pedigree from being a 1st round pick, I would guess that it would be a conditional pick that the Eagles would get that would be based on playing time for Dillard, right? So because you just absolutely never know if he's even going to get on the field. So that's why it makes it very hard to project what they would get.
All right, let's go to yesterday's trade. 4th round pick from last year, Josiah Scott. And people said they need a corner. They got a corner. Well, he's 5'9" and 185 pounds, so he's not playing opposite Darius Slay. But can he play next to Darius Slay, and can he be in competition for that slot spot?
Well, he's going to get a shot to play the outside, and I know what everybody's thinking, right? Anybody who's done the research now or read our story on InsideTheBirds.com or maybe even on your website has seen the comp, right? They've seen that he has good speed despite being 5'9", good physicality, good athleticism, and those are all of the things that were said about Avonte Maddox coming out of Pitt as well, and similarly a 4th round pick, right? And Avonte Maddox clearly has not flourished on the outside, not played well. That doesn't mean, though, that Josiah Scott is definitely not going to be a good outside corner. So, we have to be careful in just deciding that one guy is going to be typecast as another just because another similarly sized guy is as well. So he'll get a shot, Mike, to see if he can play the outside, but he certainly came out of college with questions about whether or not he could play the outside because of his size limitations. But at Michigan State, he played the boundary. A couple of people I talked to told me what they liked about him on tape was that he was able to run with guys like Hamler from Penn State, who is a speedy receiver, and the kid from Ohio State, Olav, who may be one of the best receivers in the country going into next year. He ran well with those guys on tape. And so, but again, so did Avonte Maddox. Didn't work out for him on the outside. Doesn't mean Josiah Scott, but because they don't have great depth at that position, Mike, he's going to get a chance to compete and see if he can do it.
Yeah, and the thing too, I mean, when I saw this, of course, Maddox comes up, and as you wrote, another slot stockpiling. You're going to have a lot of guys battling in that slot position. I kind of looked at it as, if we can't get another guy, Maddox has to go back outside. We can at least get a guy that we like, because I think they want to play Maddox in the slot, but if we can't, we got this guy now, and Maddox will go back out. But you're saying maybe he goes out and Maddox goes inside. Maybe he could be, Mark McMillan comes to mind, little Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I mean, you definitely, I guess I can't slam the door because I don't know how Josiah Scott is going to adapt to this defense, what he's going to be like in training camp. So I don't want to automatically assume he'll get the first crack at outside. What I do think is that, as Nick Sirianni says, it's all competition, and Josiah Scott will have an opportunity to compete to see if he can be on the outside. And if not, could he potentially push Maddox out of the slot and start? I don't know. I mean, they're similar pedigree. I guess that's the whole spirit of competition.
Well, I guess what? The rest of that group is not very inspiring. So if you can't beat out that group of guys,
I think you're being kind.
Yeah, that's not good. All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Can I tell you this real quick? When I talk to guys from other teams around the league who know what the Eagles are, but don't know they don't get the minutia, and I say, here's the list of their cornerbacks after Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox, and I start going through the Shaquille Taylors and the Lavert Hills. I have never had so many people laugh. I'm not that funny, but they just start laughing. It's almost inconceivable. Some of these, the Michael Jaquettes of the world, like some of these guys have just not heard of them.
I mean, Kayvon Seymour was working at like FedEx. I mean, for God's sakes, when they found him last year. So exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of guys here that don't have a big pedigree. Over on the Inside the Birds platform, the Q&A, they had a great conversation regarding, I guess Jason Avant was invited to speak at the rookie camp last weekend, and really glowing about how different it is over there from when he spoke last year. And I thought that was an eye-opening, conversation that him and Quentin Michael were having on the Inside the Birds platform about how the energy's different, and just like this, it almost seemed like it was very territorial last year.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. I mean, I think the way he described it was just so tense. There were obviously, behind the scenes feuds developing that people know about now, whether it's management, whether it's coaching, whether it's players. And there were just, for Jason, he did, at first he started off as the intern for training camp. Then he accepts to be an assistant wide receivers coach for a year. And the poor guy is like, hey, I want to give this coaching thing a shot. And he walks into one of the worst overall team situations that this team has had in a long, long time. And so in some regards, you can look at it and say it's pretty cool that he was able to go back and see that there was just a renewed sense of life back in the NovaCare. In another regard, I would say the bar was pretty low compared to, for what he went through. And that's kind of natural. You get rid of guys, you bring new people in. It is the honeymoon stage in the NovaCare complex. And that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be when all there's newness is going on. Nobody's lost a game yet. Nobody's gotten demoted. Nobody's gotten fired, right? So it's a good feeling. But when you have to rebuild a culture, that's what you at least have to start with. We remember when Chip Kelly came in here, it wasn't like the red carpet was rolled out for him by the players and they knew what they were getting into, and there was already a preconceived notion. So I think now they're getting to know Nick Sirianni, and the big key for Jason was that even he admitted as an observer, some of the press conferences left him wondering, like, is this guy for real or is he a little bit too rah-rah? And then he and Nick wound up having a good chat. And at least Jason can say it's genuine. He's not a phony. He's not a fraud. That's how he really is. How that will play during the regular season after a tough loss to Dallas is yet to be determined. But what he could determine now is that he's not putting on a face. This is really who he is.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, today, Jalen Hurts spoke, and his answer has been getting, all over the place. In fact, he's trending on Twitter today. It's almost like Pro Football Focus made him the 31st quarterback on their list of quarterbacks, which, fair or unfair, he only played 4 games last year. Part of the criteria was your history. Now, that being said, he had rookie quarterbacks ranked ahead of Jalen who have never taken a snap before, but I don't have a problem with the ranking so much. There's nothing really to go off of, but his answer today, hey, the rent is due every day. And at the end of the thing, I plan on paying my rent and not missing a day of that rent payment. I mean, and I said before, he is a leader before he is a quarterback. His quarterback skills should not be questioned. But like Russell Wilson, I say, you think of Russell Wilson, the leader, before you think of Russell Wilson, the quarterback. And he's a tremendous quarterback. If Hurts is in the same mold, the way he handles stuff, you got yourself a great one.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat. I mean, I agree with you, and I've said all along, what really impressed me last year about Jalen Hurts was take the football, the plays away, because it was such an unfair type of environment to judge him in. But his leadership and his poise were on display from day one. I mean, he wins his first start against that good New Orleans defense, and then you're down 16-0 against Arizona on the road, took a safety, didn't have a great, first 15 minutes. And a lot of guys would have gotten lost in that. Arizona was a decent team last year, and he was able to come back and put points on the board. They lost the game, but they fought hard. And so given everything he's been through from going to Alabama, then to Oklahoma, the kid has a good story of perseverance. That's a great story. That's what's gotten him here, Mike, the ability to do that. Having poise, having leadership, and then also combining that with being an improved player on the football field, a better quarterback, will determine whether he can make this thing long-term.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. We got the Eagles wrapping up stuff with the camps. And, of course, they're always making news. Who signs tomorrow? Find out right here on Football at 4. I mean, they still need corner. I don't know. Okay, real quick, I'll ask you this. I was talking to Rob Motti about this yesterday. This is a team that won 4 games. This is a team that is kind of trying to remake itself. I don't see very many camp competitions. Do you? I see left tackle. I see corner.
Oh, I think I think there's going to be competition at linebacker. I think there's going to be competition at. If you mean starting, I would agree with you, but I still think running back.
Starting.
Okay, yeah, no, starting probably not.
I'm saying, right. I feel like every line spot but left tackle is pretty much, you're going to have Rieger and Smith. And you're probably going to have a slot competition that I would probably lean towards Ward. Goddard will be your tight end. Sanders will be your running back. There's your offense. You got Barnett, Graham, Fletcher, and Hargrave. You've got Singleton and Wilson. I don't know that anybody's beating them out. You got Slay and his merry men on the other side. You got Harris and you got McLeod.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. From a start, and that's the way it is for most NFL teams in camp for the last many years, that the starters are pretty much solidified going into camp. But I will tell you this, Mike, when we talk about that left tackle battle, this is just my opinion, all right? I'm not reporting anything. I don't think that's 50-50 going into camp. I think Jordan Mailata's job is to lose. Right? It's Jordan Mailata's job to lose.
That's such a weird one, though, because you got a first-round pick who didn't play last year. You would think we want this guy to win the job. He was a first-round pick. But there's this charm in, hey, I found a seventh-rounder, and he is our left tackle for the next 10 years. What actually makes you a better GM? Finding the seventh-round starter or hitting on the first round?
Winning. That's what makes you a better GM. And whoever gives you the best chance to win.
No. Winning the Super Bowl didn't do anything for Howie Roseman. He still stinks to everybody.
Well, I mean, again, it's like you win, but then you set the house on fire, but then you put it out with your own fire extinguisher. I don't really know how that really goes.
Real quick, on my 53, I kept Davion Taylor. He's a third-round pick. Is he a home run to make the team?
Probably, Mike. I mean, they do have some pretty good competition here at linebacker. It would be a real issue if they I mean, it would be a real acknowledgement of the reality that they overdrafted him. But
a new defensive coordinator, he might say, this guy don't fit with me at all. And Jannard Avery, they're moving to linebacker. Joe Ostman, they're going to move to linebacker. I mean, They all guys. I mean, Avery's another interesting one. You gave him a fourth-round pick, and he essentially gave you a sack?
Yeah, and don't forget, Ryan Kerrigan, I don't think he's going to be the traditional defensive end as some might think he is. In this defense, in the Mike Zimmer defense, they have, in a kind of a 4-3 under or a stun 4-3, whatever you want to call it. They have room for a strong side linebacker, kind of like Anthony Barr, right, who can come down on the line and also rush the passer.
Yeah.
And so if Kerrigan winds up
a lot of.
Yeah, yes. So Kerrigan can probably be considered a linebacker, pass rusher hybrid. So if you're counting him on the linebacker, that's an extra guy along with Wilson, along with Singleton. That's 3 right there. If you keep 5, and then it becomes, you've got Taylor, you got Sean Bradley, you got the kid that they drafted. TJ Edwards, of course, and the kid they drafted that they're turning into a linebacker from LSU. So there's competition there.
Stevens.
Jacob, right. There's competition there, but the kid has the ability to run, and maybe they can figure out a way to that translate onto the field.
Who knew this deep into May we had so many Eagles conversations to get into here on Football 4. All right, Geoff Mosher, make sure you follow at Inside Birds for all things Inside the Birds, and the new podcast drops tomorrow at 6 a.m. with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan, and Adam is here for Football at 4 tomorrow on the Sports Bash. All right, Moshe, see you, man.
Have a great one, man.
You do the same. Geoff Mosher, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Adam Kaplan's here tomorrow. I think the Davion Taylor thing is very interesting. That's a third-round pick that played Zippo. Nothing. He gave you 0 bucket. How will they handle that? We'll talk to Adam about that coming up tomorrow. All these battles. Geoff just said, I don't see very many positional battles for the starting lineup. A lot of roster battles. Not starting battles. Sports Bash this hour brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. All right. By the way, speaking of PropSwap, get the PGA this weekend. Buy up those tickets and start selling them. Cam Rogers will join me tomorrow to preview the PGA. What's that, in South Carolina, I think, this weekend? All right, when we come back, it's Do You Remember time, May 19th. Let me see if I can get you a little tease on May 19th. You ready for this one? Do you remember, okay? Do you remember? This happened for the first time ever. And I got the details next. All right, here we go. It's time for Do You Remember Events that happened on this day, May the 19th? Do you remember? My producer, Josh Henning, will join me to take a look back at some of the, how about this one? One of the listeners watching says, on this day in 2001, the Sixers beat the Raptors to enter the Eastern Conference Final against the Bucks. That did not make my list. But on this day in 2001, is that accurate? If it is, good job out of you, Rodney.
Accurate.
You
I'm going to double check if that's accurate.
Okay.
Let's do a little multitasking.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. On this day, May 19th, for the first time ever, 1974, the Flyers beat the Bruins 1-0 at the Spectrum to win the Stanley Cup in 6 games. The Flyers become the first NHL expansion team to win it all in their first finals appearance. They win 4-2 over the Boston Bruins. It happened on this day in 1974. It really hasn't happened since. One other time.
Well, here's the problem with the Flyers. I think that the biggest problem with this franchise is that the owner of the team before he passed away was so beholden to the 70s and 80s that the team never evolved. And the organization has been paying for that lack of evolution ever since.
Well, yeah, there was a while there where Mr. Snyder, the chairman, would do whatever it took to win. But he was really going out and getting old Flyers and big names past their prime that got the overzealous fan base excited.
Right. By the way, it was a day off. May 20th is
so it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So it's on tomorrow's Do You Remember?
Yes.
Okay.
Sixers beat the Raptors 88-87.
On this day in 2000, Patrick Waugh tied an NHL record with his 15th career playoff shutout as the Avalanche won 2-0 against the visiting Stars. How about that? 15 playoff shutouts. Remember, who was it? Carter Hart had 2 shutouts last year. We were like, holy mackerel, 2 shutouts in the playoffs. Raw had 15.
Patrick Waugh was one of those guys that he had one of those careers that I don't think it's more appreciated now than it was then, kind of thing.
Well, I feel like goalies back then were stars, big names. I can't even name like 5 goalies that are like these great goalies. They seem to go up and down so fast.
Well, because they're all inconsistent now. The problem with the goaltending in today's NHL is that it's flaky. Like, here's a perfect example. The Florida Panthers are starting their backup Drager now because Bobrovsky, who has won 2 Vezinas, by the way, they considered, you know what? You're not cutting it. We need to put it in the backup in the playoff series against Tampa. That's where we're at now.
I feel like that's another thing, okay? In hockey, the starting goaltender, like Patrick Roy, Marty Brodeur,
Dominic Hasek,
they played every night. Now it's like, you're going to get 5 days off. I mean, they don't play every single night like that.
No, they don't. And it's ridiculous to me. I think at some point, like, this whole thing with Vegas, like, people like Vegas to win the cup because they have 2 goaltenders. That's where we're at now. Everyone asks the question, well, do you have 2 viable goaltenders? And then we'll pick you to be a Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, where's like, even like Lundqvist, who, they didn't win anything with him, but he was a great goaltender.
He was a stud.
Yeah. Yeah, the goaltender, I mean, you could rip off. We just named, the three big was Roy, Patrick Waugh, Hasek, and Brodeur. They were like.
But you had Ed Belfour back in the day. He was a big name.
The only team that didn't have one was the Flyers.
Right. Well, they had as soon as Hextall left, they were in search of the next.
Yeah, they're the only team that, like, every team had their guy. Now, I mean, my God, the goaltender has
before Lundqvist,
so
it was Mike Richter. Remember him?
Yes, he played for the Van Briesbroek played for the Flyers. They got him when he was too old.
Right. Well, Van Briesbroek was the guy who got unseated by Richter.
Patrick Waugh was he was awesome. What's the Grant Fuhr?
Oh, it's another one. Yeah.
Man, you don't make them like that. Edmonton. All right, 2000. On this day, Indiana guard Reggie Miller scored 17 fourth-quarter points to beat the Knicks 93-80 to win Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The win put the Pacers in their only NBA Finals in franchise history. They lost to the Lakers in 6 games, but those Reggie Miller Pacers teams, underappreciated.
Underappreciated also because
Rick Smits. The
Mark
Davis
Jackson.
brothers. Antonio
Dale
Davis and
Antonio.
Dale Davis. They weren't actually brothers, but
No, but
they're both 6'10 stiffs.
also had Jalen Rose on that team.
Yeah.
Mark Jackson, Travis Best.
Detlef Shrimp.
Yeah, he was there for a hot minute.
Yeah.
But the problem with the Pacers was that they got to the finals so late that by the time they finally got there, the majority of the team was just past their prime.
Well, you remember those Pacer teams, the Sixers finally beat them. When the Sixers got to the playoffs for that first time, it was like in Iverson's
third year.
Yeah, they had played the Pacers and kept getting beat.
Yeah,
they finally beat the Pacers and got there, and then the Pacers, got there a little bit later. But Reggie Miller was very underappreciated. Reggie Miller would be great in today's game.
Reggie Miller would be arguably a top 10 player in today's game.
2004, this guy would be a great player in today's game too. Kevin Garnett scored 32 points and had 21 rebounds as the Minnesota Timberwolves beat Sacramento. Yes, the Timberwolves and the Kings used to both be really good. They beat them at the Target Center in Game 7 of the Western Conference semis. The Timberwolves went to their only Western Conference finals. They lost to the Lakers in 6 games. Today's also Garnett's birthday, by the way. He's a 15-time All-Star. He was born on this day in 1976. But think about that. So I think a lot of people out there think of Garnett as a Celtic.
I think of him as Timberwolf.
He's an all-time great Timberwolf.
First of all, he was
the only great Timberwolf.
Well, arguably, yeah. So the thing with Garnett was he was the first modern day high school to NBA star.
He was.
And
he was also the one modern day 6'10", shoot it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was other guys, but he was a little different.
But what made Garnett different, though, was he was such a monster competitor that he fought you on both ends of the floor, literally and figuratively. I go on to argue with a lot of people that when you talk about the greatest power forwards of all time, I think an argument can be made that Garnett was a better guy, was a better career than Duncan and Malone.
Hall of Fame.
Yep. Hall of Fame.
Just put in.
Strong bald head, too.
2008, John Lester no-hits the Royals 7-0. Lester had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma 2 seasons prior. He comes back, gets the no-hitter, which seems to happen every night of the week. One happened last night, by the way. But Lester just pitched against the Phillies the other night.
Lester also won a World Series with Boston and Chicago. He won a World Series with both those franchises. Theo Epstein said, "Come with me to Chicago, help the Cubs win." And he's got that illustrious thing on his resume, too.
2010, on this day, the Mets turned a 8-2, 6-3 triple play in the 5th inning against the Nationals. It's the first time that ever happened. So they went from center field to catcher, threw a guy out at the plate. The catcher threw to short, got the force out at second, and then over to first for the force out at first.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, so I guess the guy's tagging up from third. Right?
And then
how does that even happen? 8-2, 6-3. So catcher, center field, throws a guy, tagging
someone had
third.
to fall down, right? One of the runners had to fall.
Something, because how do you go from from center field to home, get the play at the plate, and then the 2 guys didn't have enough time to get all the way back to their bases? How would the one guy tag and the other 2 guys didn't know to tag?
Right. I mean, it had to be also maybe a semi-shallow ball, right? Unless you're Vlad Guerrero, you're not gunning a guy out of home plate, easily. There's only a handful of guys who have howitzers for arms.
Happy birthday on this day, 1949. Archie Manning was born in Drew, Mississippi, the quarterback at Ole Miss. First-team All-American, Walter Camp Memorial Trophy, 1969. He makes the Pro Bowl twice with the Aints, who are really the Saints. His sons are Peyton and Eli, and they collectively won 4 Super Bowls during their career. I guess the greatest quarterback family of all time.
Yeah, and also he's the 2nd greatest Saints quarterback of all time, too. Don't forget that. Before Drew Brees showed up, he was the franchise best in almost everything.
Yep. So there you go. Happy birthday, Archie Manning, on this day, May 19th.
Talk about a guy who would have done great in today's game. Archie was a scrambling quarterback who ran for his life half the time, and he had a great arm. Imagine what he would have done in today's game.
Still trying to figure out that triple play.
Still ringing around.
I gotta look that up. An 8-2-6-3 triple play. How the hell does that even happen? Is there a Met fan out there that remembers that triple play that can kind of like set the scene of what the hell happened on that thing?
I don't trust a lot of Met fans in general.
Center field, it's got to be, okay, has to be a ball hit the center.
Right.
Guy tags up from third.
Right.
Where's the 6 come into play here? So the catcher fires down to second and gets a force at second who throws to first and gets a. So there had to be bases loaded here.
Yeah, it's got to be. And maybe the runners were running.
Maybe it's not a tag up. Maybe it's a
base hit.
Right, but if there was a base hit and you were on third base, you would score.
That's what I'm saying. It had to be a shallow hit. Maybe the center fielder just made a perfect throw to home plate.
Weird. All right, well, there you go. That's what happened today, May 19th. On this day, do you remember? Brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan Open, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online at mattblattnissan.com. I'm Mike Gill. We'll do it again tomorrow. Find out what happened on May the 20th. And then the weekend edition, Happy Hour Friday. Somebody how about Wally Zerbiak, all-time Timberwolf? The all-time Timberwolves would probably include Wally Zerbiak. That's how bad they've been. Karl Anthony Towns, not Karl Malone, Garnett. I mean, whoever was on that team during the Garnett years, that's it. That's their team. That's the only time they've been any good. Sam Mitchell. He was on the expansion crew. All right, we're back. Tim Legler tonight at 5 o'clock. All right, Sports Bets this hour being brought to you by Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bets. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We got a busy night for you. Spurs and Grizzlies at 7, Warriors and Lakers to follow. Tomorrow, we will have the Pacers and Wizards here on 97.3 ESPN. That game, the coverage starts at 7:30. On Friday, we will have the winner of tonight's Spurs-Grizzlies game against the loser of the Warriors-Lakers game. That game is at 8:30 tip. On Saturday, we'll have Dallas and the Clippers in the NBA playoffs. And on Sunday, we'll have the Sixers. Time to be determined. How about two fans running on the field last night at the Phillies game in the same inning? But did it actually spark a rally for the Phils? If you remember, all of a sudden the Phils start hitting the ball. So what's that going to do? Is that going to start the tradition of like the 7th inning stretch, the 8th inning run on the field? Right? The tradition, like unlike any other, the Phillies always have two fans run on the field in the 8th inning. They scored 7 runs in the 8th. What an inning that. By the way, who knew Ronald Torreyes was even on the team? I know he got called up yesterday. He's been sick. He had COVID, so he missed the first month of the season with COVID. He comes up and has a tie-breaking pinch hit 2-run double in the 8th. Who knew he was on the team? But really the guy that I got to bring up is Maton. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. He just comes up there. He lines an RBI single to tie the game up. Herrera reached on an infield single. The whole thing. Hoskins hits a single. Boom. He smokes one off the fence. Herrera hits an infield single. Knapp walks. He loads the bases. So now it's bases loaded. You're down 3-2. You know, they have was it Miller? That was the play that Miller they what's it called? It was that the inning before. Miller, they challenged the call at first base. So it's basically Hoskins, Bohm, it's Bohm, Herrera, and Knapp are on the bases. And Maton comes up. I mean, and Maton just calmly strokes a single, man. This kid, it has been unbelievable. Who knows where they would be without Nick Maton? Well, he's not in the lineup tonight. That's the moral of the story is Maton's not even in the lineup tonight. He's a lefty, not in the lineup tonight. I don't know who's pitching for the Marlins. I'm imagining it's a lefty. But here's the lineup for the Phils tonight. You got McCutchen leading off, Segura batting second, Harper in right, Hoskins at first, Bohm at third, Knapp behind the dish, Herrera in center field, and Torreyes is playing shortstop. You know, DD's on the DL, the IL, excuse me. Zach Eflin is your pitcher tonight, so he is in the 9-hole. Trevor Rogers is the pitcher of record tonight for the Marlins with a 1.84 earned run average. But here's a couple things I will say about the Phils. A lot of heart last night getting back into that game because Wheeler deserved it, right? Bohm had a great night. He got thrown out at second, though, which can't happen, but he's really starting to hit the ball hard. He hits it the other way. Love the way he approaches things. I know somebody said to me the other day, I had a guy text in last week, hey, your boy Bohm. Hey, I'll take Bohm at bats all day, every day. Bohm gets it. He is just a different approach than most guys have in today's game. But the last 7 days, Bohm has started to turn it on a little bit here. 7 for 26, 3 doubles. The power just hasn't been there for Bohm yet. That's the one thing I'd like to see Bohm start to do is hit the ball for a little bit more power. And, I think he will end up doing that. He's a guy that I think will be probably a 20-25 home run guy for them down the road here. But Maton is the guy that I want to highlight a little bit here. He's not in the lineup tonight, which kind of disappoints me. This guy's approach, too, is just fantastic. No long stride, short, compact swing. That's what, like, you see, look at the standings right now. I know no one's paying attention to early season baseball. It's kind of like trivial at times, but look at the teams that are in first place. The St. Louis Cardinals, the Royals were in first place for a while there. They're not anymore. The Chicago White Sox. I mean, these are teams. The Oakland A's. The Oakland A's have no business being in first place. You know, you look at that roster. The San Francisco Giants. Somehow the San Francisco Giants have won 61% of their games. It's pretty crazy. I mean, like the teams that were predicted in the West, it was the Dodgers and the Padres. And right now, it's San Francisco. In the Central, the Cardinals probably, that division's kind of murky. You don't have a clear cut. The Cubs offense is not very good. The Brewers were, kind of the Reds were the team in the Central that a lot of people were picking when you go back to the beginning. And they've struggled. They have not played good. In the West, most people went with the Astros. They have been good, and they're the only team in the division with they have a plus 55 run differential. The Central, Chicago has been pretty much the best team in baseball so far. Them and the Giants have both won 26 games. They're 26-16, and then Boston in the American League. So I say this because you look at the National League East. All these other races are kind of surprising. The National League East has the Mets one game up on the Phillies. So as much as the Phillies have been rocky, that division doesn't have a team with a plus run differential. Last night, the Marlins tied themselves up. They're 161-161 after losing 8-3 last night. But the National League East is going to be the Mets. Keep in mind, DeGrom should be back. I think he might even be pitching tomorrow. But the Mets are going to get some pitching back. Atlanta's been highly disappointing. Who brought that point up? Frank, about how disappointing that, hey, as much as we're disappointed in the Phillies and they've been sloppy and they're doing this and that, the Braves were predicted to win this division and they're playing really bad baseball. So the Phillies, if they can fix this a little bit, tweak it a little bit. I would say fix it, tweak it a little bit. They should be in this for the long haul, as McGarry has said a couple of times on the show. I have the Phillies at the beginning of the season about 85, 86, 87 wins, somewhere in that range. There's your lineup for tonight for the Phils and the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, coming up next, Tim Legler is here. He'll talk about the NBA playoffs and the Sixers' path through the playoffs. Can they beat Brooklyn? Legler next. right, final hour of the show. Should be a good one here. ESPN's Tim Legler looks at the NBA playoffs, the Sixers' path, and more as we bring him on the Boardwalk Honda hotline in just a second. Real quick, so that triple play, Cole from LBI said he went and watched it on YouTube for us. Runners on first and second. Angel Pagan fielded a shallow fly ball in center. He thought he caught the ball, but the umpire ruled trap. He threw the ball in, rolled to the catcher. The runners thought Pagan caught the ball. They didn't run. The catcher picked up the rolling ball, threw it to second. They tagged the runner at second, and the forced play from the runner on first. Then the shortstop threw the ball to first because the hitter thought Pagan caught the ball as well. Triple play. Thank you, Cole from LBI. That was very generous of you to go look that up and then text it all into us. Tim Legler, ESPN, NBA, the playoff, the play-in games, which were kind of crappy last night. But he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Legs, good to catch up, man. How you been?
What's up, Mike? I'm good, man. You're right. Those were crappy. Those were a couple of duds last night. And, it's kind of a shame because this play-in, I think, is a tremendous concept. I think it's generated a lot of excitement, but it only works if all four teams are completely bought into being there that night. And that obviously wasn't the case with Charlotte and Washington. I don't think Russell Westbrook was playing as if that was a desperate game for him. I think he looked at it like we have a game in hand. If we lose, we get Indiana, and I'd rather play Philadelphia anyway. I really think that's what Russell Westbrook's philosophy was last night, because he did not have the same level of, you got to kill me to stop me mentality that he normally plays with last night. And obviously Charlotte, you give up 144 points to a team and your season's going to end if you lose the game. That's just a complete lack of just mental focus to play that game last night for the Hornets.
Yeah, it's funny. I said that yesterday, Legs, and I kind of got ripped for it. I said, maybe one of these teams doesn't want to play Brooklyn, and you watch that in the game tonight. And then, I got people telling me, you got to win the game. If you lose, you might not make the playoffs. Well, if you have a chance to win one of the two games, you're going to take that shot. So you think that maybe Washington wanted to avoid playing, because a lot of people thought Washington of the four was the best.
Yeah, listen, I had them going in as clearly winning that game the way they've been playing, and Boston is so wildly inconsistent, and you don't have Jaylen Brown. I looked at that game, and I watched Westbrook in the first half, and his lack of aggression offensively. And look, I know he had 13 rebounds and 5 assists at halftime, which is kind of ridiculous, to have 13 boards as a point guard and a half. He had 1 rebound and no assist in the second half. I mean, you come on. I mean, a guy like Russell Westbrook can get that in his sleep. So I'm not saying they went out and deliberately lost the game. What I think happened, though, was they played the game and they probably had the mentality, look, if we're in the game and Boston's going to, let us stick around and give it to us, we'll go ahead and take the game. Because they're right. People that say, hey, you can't lose that, like intentionally, because now really your entire season hinges on one night. And if you play Indiana tomorrow night and somebody gets in foul trouble, somebody gets hurt, somebody has a bad shooting night, Beal doesn't play well, you're done. So I get that, and I think there's some truth in that. I'm just saying, mentally, knowing you did not have to win that game to move on.
Right.
And by not winning the game, you have, I think, a more advantageous matchup. That makes sense to me. And so let's see what Westbrook comes out with tomorrow night, and you'll know pretty early. If he's an aggressive offensive player looking to get to the rim, set the tone with his pace and his speed, I think it's going to say a lot, because he was not looking to score in the first half of that game. And as a result, you end up digging yourself a little bit of a hole. Eventually Tatum got hot, and there you go. Game over. And now they get one matchup with a team, by the way. Listen, another component of this. Have you seen Russell Westbrook's numbers against Indiana this year? He's averaging like 25 points, 20 assists in 3 games. So if you don't think he loves playing against Indiana, there is no doubt in his mind they are going to beat the Pacers. And he knew that going in.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, it makes it a more advantageous matchup, I believe, for them. Look, I don't think they'll beat Philly, but I don't think they had any shot to play Brooklyn. And the last thing Russell Westbrook wanted to see was Kevin Durant on a stacked team playing against him and ending his season.
That's what we all wanted to see, though. We wanted to see Wizards, Nets, and Westbrook against Durant. That would have been fun, but we're not going to get that. So, Tim Legler, you mentioned Philly. That's who they'll play. This Indiana, who just beat them 2 weeks ago, does Indiana or Washington give Philly any headaches in round one?
I think Washington could be a little bit of a headache. I don't think Indiana will be. I mean, you take Karis LeVert out, they're talking up to 2 weeks. He could miss. How are you supposed to now say that? Now they scored 144 points against Charlotte, and Sabonis didn't even play well. But look, the Hornets gave up 3 uncontested dunks on baseline out of bounds plays. So that shows you where they were at last night mentally. So don't go by that game. The Sixers are the best perimeter defensive team in the league. They're going to play against Indiana. Indiana, without Karis LeVert, I think Indiana has a hard time getting to 100 points. So Indiana, I don't think, gives them any trouble. Washington, with that backcourt, with the way that those two guys can get going, can control the game with the pace, yes, they could be a little bit of a problem. Philly will win the series, but I would not be shocked if Washington won a couple of games in that series. But I don't think you're going to get to a point where you're in a game 7 in Philadelphia. I don't think it'll get to that point. I think Washington would be far scarier to play than the Pacers.
All right, we'll get to tonight's game in just a second. I want to stay in the East because if you've been watching any of the ESPN properties, you've seen Timmy Legler mention you think Miami is going to upset Milwaukee here. Now, it's funny because Milwaukee got upset last year. Everybody had them as the favorite, and the year before. Now, this year's team's been under the radar, and people are like, they're under the radar. Watch out for them. Was this the worst possible scenario for them?
Yeah, I think it's the one team they probably didn't want to see. And look, the Heat are playing their best basketball of the year. Jimmy Butler's been unbelievable. I mean, he's playing at an all-league level right now coming into it. They got everybody healthy. And for me, the biggest issue is this. Like the Bucks, the last 2 years, best record of regular season. They came up short in the playoffs. Two years ago, it was Toronto who just zoned up basically Giannis. He didn't have an answer for that. Last year, he got hurt in the series. I don't think they were going to win it anyway. And so they get Drew Holiday. And I say to my son, Bobby Portis, like some big pickups. And I'm like, all right, I like this team better than the last two because Drew Holiday is a guy now as a primary ball handler that you can get the ball to in important moments in one possession games late. He can go do something off a ball screen, make a three, get to the rim, make a play. Giannis, if they continue to try to settle games by giving him the ball with a dribble coming out of the backcourt and an isolation at the top of the key, and he continues to be reluctant to shoot the ball. He drives into gaps where there's people in front of him. He commits offensive fouls. He throws the ball away. He takes off-balance shots at the rim. It's just not his game to give the ball to him late, let him ISO, and let him go and expect something good to happen. And when I watch them this year, it doesn't look like they've learned the lesson because their record is great, but when they get into those moments, they revert back to the mentality of, this guy's an MVP 2 times. He's our best player. That's what you do in this league. You give it to your best player, particularly with an MVP, and you let him go. And if they keep doing that, they're not going to beat Miami because they are going to come up small in the moments that matter most that turn an entire series around. And that's why I picked the Miami Heat because I just haven't seen Milwaukee navigate those tight games any differently than they have in the past. And Eric Spoelstra is too good a coach. They're going to be too prepared defensively to allow Giannis to gut them at those moments and get to the rim. It's not going to happen.
Tim Legler, I like that. That's interesting because everybody thought it was a 3-team race. And, of course, the Sixer fans were kind of panicking. Oh, we don't want to play the Heat in round 1. Now you don't have to face either one of them. You only have to face Brooklyn. How about Philly's path that they ended up getting?
Yeah, all right. So you're going to get a Washington team, let's say, most likely, I believe. I think that'll be a good test for them. I think they're going to put a lot of pressure on you defensively to guard, and that's good to have a series like that to start off. Then you're talking about Knicks Atlanta, winner of that one. Atlanta is a team I know has given Philly a little bit of trouble, and they've had Trae Young has done some things against them. Ultimately, though, I look at their team and I look at how young they are and going through this for the first time. They would not be ready for that stage against Philly. And I think Philly's defense ultimately will suffocate those perimeter players. And the Knicks, look, I think the Knicks have a good chance of winning that series. You get the Knicks, that's going to be a battle, a war, a more of a grinded out, physical. You might see some altercations in that series. That would be a lot of fun to watch Philly and the Knicks, but the Knicks just do not have enough firepower. Because R.J. Barrett is not on that level yet where he's consistent enough to give you 20 a night. Randall's a star, legit. He'll do his thing. Barrett, questionable. And then you count on guys like Derrick Rose and Quickly and Bullock and people like that. Are they going to be able – Derrick Rose, I think, actually will play well. R.J. Barrett, I don't really trust. Quickly's a rookie. And Bullock, I don't think he's going to play as well as he has lately. So I don't think the Sixers have a problem with either one of those teams. That's at max a 6-game series, and that obviously sets up the conference finals with Brooklyn.
Which would obviously, this is kind of like, and I don't want to get so far ahead and break that thing down, but you got these three offensive players who knows what they're going to look like against, as you just mentioned, they are the best perimeter defensive team. So you got this defensive-minded team, and quite frankly, Legs, they could probably be better defensively if they play Thibault more minutes, if they play George Hill more minutes. Like, they could change their philosophy up against Brooklyn and maybe make that even a more offense versus defense situation.
Yeah, and they're going to have to. I think the key against Brooklyn is, look, Harden gets a ton of screens, ball screens. That's not a one-man job. So whether it's Simmons or Thibault or Danny Green, whoever's guarding him, that's not really their responsibility other than don't get blown by, because he's going to get ball screens. So he's going to engage the big. So the game plan against Harden is different than Durant and Kyrie Irving. Those guys get some ball screens too, but they do a lot of just straight attack off the dribble, try to get to their sweet spots. When if you can play them with one guy and at least make them work to take contested shots, and I think Philly has more guys that can do that to them than anybody else, you've done your job. So it really comes down to that. Can Thibault and Green and Simmons, can these guys, and Embiid's obviously back there, but it's going to be mainly that mid-range area of the floor that Kyrie and Durant just dominate. Can they stay with them and not get in foul trouble and make them take tough contested shots? If you can, you've won the battle. And sometimes, guess what? They're so good it goes in anyway, and you're not beating that team if that's the case. But I think Philadelphia is as equipped as any team in the NBA from a personnel standpoint to play against them. But look, here's what it comes down to for me. That's why I think Brooklyn's going to win it all. You've never seen in the history of this league 3 guys with this kind of raw offensive talent on the same team. It's never existed. They can beat you in every platform there is offensively, each of them. So the fact that they've worked out the Kyrie Harden thing, because they kind of have, it's James Harden's team clearly. He's running the show. He dictates possessions. Kyrie says, okay, fine, I'll just go be an aggressive off guard. He's cool with that role. And then Durant can get 30 no matter if he could be playing with the 4 greatest scorers in the history of the league, and he's still getting 30 because he's that good. It's that efficient. So they've worked it out from a personality standpoint. Now, Mike, the one thing we haven't seen, when they get tested and they're in one possession game inside of a minute, what are they going to do offensively? Because if they're going to give the ball to James Harden, let him run high ball screen like he did in Houston in those situations, and Kevin Durant is not touching the ball or he's not the primary option, Brooklyn can be beaten.
That's very well put, Tim Legler, and we hope we get to see that matchup, offense versus defense, Sixers in Brooklyn, and, of course, that would be in your Eastern Conference Finals because the Sixers got the 1 seed. Now, Legs, so many people said Sixers. Okay, I'll believe it when I see it in the playoffs. Can teams defend the Sixers the same? I mean, can they run this wall against Ben Simmons and say, hey, you're not going to shoot it? Or is this new roster configuration take away some of the sagging?
Well, I know what I would do if I were playing against them. I mean, first of all, obviously, yeah, you're backing off them as much as you possibly can. But I've been amazed how many teams don't employ a couple of different strategies against Philadelphia. One being, and I know he's a good weak side slasher, doubling off of him. Whoever is guarding him is the double guy on Embiid with a half rotation to him, meaning if he dives hard to the paint or along the baseline, obviously he's got to be picked up and checked and hip checked or bumped or forearmed to keep him from getting direct cut pass from Embiid for something at the rim. But he doesn't always do that. Sometimes he just kind of drifts around on the baseline or stands out on the perimeter. And if that's the case, a double team off of him and then a half rotation. So you kind of go halfway between your man who's a shooter probably and him. If he dives hard, yeah, you got to pick him up. And let's see if Embiid can make that cross-court pass, to a Danny Green or to a Seth Curry for a 3. Can he do that? If he kind of hangs out on the perimeter, you go full-fledged with that double team off of him. And let's see how much Ben Simmons is willing to cut and how much they're willing to feed him as a weak side slasher and beat you. Is he willing to go get 16, 18, 20 points at the rim off of dives because that's how they're playing him? I've never seen a team really even try that.
Yeah.
Because you can't leave Curry and Green.
Right.
I mean, they're too dangerous, and Korkmaz obviously they hurt you too much you've got to do it off the non-shooter. And that's, to me, is Simmons. The other thing is foul him more. Send him to the line more. Get in his head and see if he can convert early in the game. Because I think when he misses free throws early in the game, I think sometimes it impedes his confidence.
Right.
And he now becomes much less aggressive as a driver. So I think a couple of fouls on him early to put him at the line and see, he goes 1 for 4 in his first 2 trips. That might mean you're not worried as much about his up the court speed because he doesn't want to get to the rim as much. So there's ways to defend them. Bottom line is it's got to be, what are you going to do with Joel Embiid? You cannot let him just beat you up in the paint to the tune of 35 to 40 where he's getting 18 to 20 free throws and getting what he wants. You've got to make him a passer off the dribble. And the guy you leave, I think, is Simmons.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because teams in the past would sag, and Simmons didn't have anybody that can make shots. If he went down and kicked it out, there was nobody to make that shot. So if you're going to sag and let him kick it out, and they're going to get more open, because a lot of times what happens in the playoffs, legs, these shooters like the Joe Harrises of the world, teams get up in their face. They don't give him open looks. Can they do that? If you're getting in Seth Curry's face, that means you're probably not sagging off of Simmons as much, and that gives him more opportunity to get to the basket. That's going to be interesting.
Hey, Mike, it's very true. And guess what? You're going to see something similar tonight. You're going to see the Lakers trap Steph Curry 35 to 40 feet from the basket on every single ball screen. And when he comes off, and sometimes he'll keep that dribble, and he'll try to take 2 guys with him. They're going to stay with him. And you know what's going to happen? He's going to swing it back to the middle of the floor to Draymond Green. And then Draymond Green, now at his peak, when they were winning championships, Draymond Green was going to kill you from that spot when the ball came back because he had 4 on 3 or 3 on 2 on the weak side. He was either going to drive it, throw a lob to somebody, he was going to drive it, kick out the 3, or he was going to drive it to finish and occasionally mix in a wide open 3 if they left him all alone. Now, he's not the scorer he once was. He doesn't think it that way, but he better be ready to do that in this game if they want to win this game because the opportunities are going to be there for Draymond Green. It's going to be similar with Simmons. If you're going to stay home chest to chest with Curry and Korkmaz and Green and guys like that, when that ball gets rotated out of Embiid's hands, Ben Simmons is going to have space and gaps and opportunities to catch that thing and either on a slash or catch it at the 3-point line and drive it right down the gut and try to get to the rim as the defense is rotating out of the double team. But there can be no hesitation. It has to be a mindset. This going into the game, he's got to be getting himself ready, driving to the arena, knowing those opportunities are going to be there. I've got to make him pay. It's the only way to soften it up. And then Joel Embiid takes over. Same thing with Curry. He's hoping tonight, early on, Jordan Poole and Bazemore and Wiggins, and these guys are making some shots. And if they are, the Lakers adjust. Now Steph Curry gets loose. That's what has to happen. I think Ben Simmons is in a very similar situation to Draymond Green. He has to be aggressive and attacking to take some of the pressure off Embiid when they get into the postseason, and particularly if they get to a situation where you got to score a lot of points to beat a team like Brooklyn.
All right, we'll leave you with this. Embiid, you mentioned him, but if a team's going to double him late in the game, 2-point game, someone needs a bucket. Do you trust Tobias Harris to be the shot maker he's been in the regular season when it matters the most?
You have to, and I think he's convinced me enough. He's definitely on that level. He's good enough. Now, he's had some moments in the postseason where he struggled a little bit and disappeared a little bit. And so, look, that's out there. It's hanging over his head. But guess what? It's hanging over Joel Embiid's head, too. But he looks like a different player this year. So I'm expecting a similar run in the postseason to what we just saw in the regular season, which I thought he was the MVP until he got hurt. I thought it was his to win. I think he's going to be that good. So late in the game, it's one thing that's tough with a big guy. When you're running your offense to a big guy late in the game, he's susceptible to double teams, which means you can force someone else to have to beat you. And that's the one problem. This isn't a guy that's got a live dribble like a guard or a wing, like all these great scorers in the league that can beat you from anywhere on the floor with a live dribble or make a play off the dribble. He's going to catch it in certain spots, and he's going to get double teamed. He's improved his decision-making and passing out of those double teams. He's cut down on the turnovers. He makes better reads and better decisions. But it's going to mean somebody, and probably it's going to be Tobias Harris. If you're talking about a situation where you want to get a back down, a mid-range post-up, and you want to go to someplace different where you don't want the double team, I think Tobias Harris has proven he's good enough to come through for you.
All right. It all starts on Sunday for the Sixers against a TBD opponent. And tonight, before we roll, Lakers, Warriors, legs. Who wins tonight? Lakers, Warriors.
I think it's going to be the Lakers because I think this is going to be a very close game. And I think ultimately at the end of the game, I just think the physicality and power of LeBron and Anthony Davis, it's just too much for Golden State defensively. And they will get to the line. They will get to the paint. They'll get better looks, I think, late because the Lakers have one of the longest defenses in the league. So Curry late, I mean, there's going to be some tough shots he's going to have to make. LeBron and AD get into better spots because of their strength and their size. And I think ultimately you're going to see a tight game, 2 minutes to go. LeBron and AD will be the difference in the paint.
All right, there you go. He broke it down. You'll watch it tonight. You'll hear it tonight. You'll see legs all over ESPN, and he was kind enough to join us right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. I'm glad we did this, man. That was a lot of fun. Sixers Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tim Legler, appreciate it, man.
You got it, Mike. Anytime.
That was an excellent breakdown. We broke it down from almost every single angle you could, and he gave you a great way to try to defend the 76ers with the Ben Simmons stuff as Tim Legler joined us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Good to catch up with Legs. We hope to do it again during the playoffs. The Sixers, he says the Wizards would be more of a headache than the Pacers. And that game is tomorrow night right here on 97.3. All right, when we come back, Geoff Kerr. We'll talk a little NFL. Eagles make another addition to the offensive line. All that and more on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Jeff Kerr's here to talk more NFL, as we've done a lot today. If you missed any of the conversations, like Tim Legler, who just joined me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, check out our YouTube channel. We podcast all of our interviews. Of course, you can watch the full show live. You can watch the show now. If you missed the show or any parts, you can go back to our YouTube channel and watch the Sports Bash in its entirety, or all of our individual interviews, which are all up on the YouTube channel. Jeff Kerr is back from CBS Sports, covers the NFL, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Man, there's so much this time of the year. You always feel like, and of course these lists and these rankings and all this stuff comes out, and then the Eagles never stop. They've made a signing for the third day in a row. So let's kind of start there. LaRaven Clark, not a big time signing, but played for Sirianni, versatile offensive lineman, played swing tackle, played some guard, and I guess this puts Andre Dillard kind of on notice there, Jeff Kerr.
Well, we'll see what happens with LaRaven Clark. I mean, he was injured for most of last year, so it's hard to gauge like how healthy this guy's going to be going into the year. It doesn't look like this was a signing where he's going to compete for a job or anything like that, at least right away. It seems like this was more of, let's take a flyer on this guy. I'm familiar with him. Competition is always good. This is going to be a depth move. I really don't think Andre Dillard has to worry about his job, at least not in training camp.
Well, I don't know if he's worried. Maybe I said it, like, not worried about his job, but gives them a little bit more ability to take a phone call or make a phone call. Hey, you interested in Dillard? Because now we have a guy that might not be ready for the start of the season, but we think, Sirianni knows him, knows his offense, so maybe he doesn't have to do as much in training camp. It gives him a little bit less reason to not listen for Dillard, no?
Is Andre Dillard on notice, though, or is it a guy like Matt Pryor? Would he be a guy that's listed a little bit?
Yeah, but nobody wants Matt Pryor. I'm talking about,
you never know. I thought no one wanted Dennis Kelly either, and then somehow the Eagles were able to trade him. I mean, they didn't get anything for him if you want to look at Dorial Green Beckham, but they were able to trade him, and Dennis Kelly ended up becoming a fine starter in this league. But, back to your initial point, it may be something like, hey, we have this former first-round pick who's very valuable. We really don't know what we have in him yet. Maybe you could take the chance on him if you want. I always thought maybe Andre Dillard would be a fit in Kansas City before they ended up getting Orlando Brown. But I don't think Kansas City wanted to fix their offensive line by taking the chance on Andre Dillard. I think they wanted to take a chance on one of the best tackles in football, and that's what they were able to do there. So it'd be very interesting to see where someone like Andre Dillard could go, because now Kansas City's out, Indianapolis is out. Maybe the Los Angeles Chargers would be interested. Maybe a team like the Los Angeles Rams would take a chance on an Andre Dillard because of Andrew Whitworth and because he's going to be 39 years old. So we're going to have to look at that, but I really don't think Dillard has to worry about anything yet. Maybe Isaac Seumalo. I don't think that's the case here, but you just don't know, especially with Landon Dickerson. He could start week 1 if he's healthy.
Yeah, no, Dillard to me is the guy only because he might have value. That's all. He was a first-round pick who doesn't have a lot of tape. So somebody might say, hey, he was a first-round pick. We scouted him in the 19 draft. We'll take a flyer on him. Now, what can you get? I don't know, because do you agree or disagree, Jeff Kerr, that Jordan Mailata right now is probably ahead of him if they have a battle at left tackle?
Right now, yeah, because we have game tape on Jordan Mailata. And Jordan Mailata played well last year. I don't think he was great, like Jason Peters great, but he wasn't terrible like I'm trying to think of a name bad left out. Eric Flowers. He wasn't Eric Flowers' terrible year last year. He was average to above average. And honestly, for a 23-year-old who barely has played football, that's more than what you can ask for. I thought I didn't think it was going to be a disaster by any means, but I was skeptical, with Jordan Mailata playing left tackle right away, just being thrown to the fire, and he held his own, and he's just going to get better year in and year out with Jeff Stoutland. So right now, I would say Jordan Mailata is the guy at left tackle to protect Jalen Hurts' blindside. And, this is a diamond in the rough pick for the Eagles.
Yeah, as Jeff Kerr, at Jeff Kerr on Jeff Kerr CBS on Twitter tweeted out about an hour ago, most pressures allowed in the 2020 season. The Eagles led the league in pressures by far, 271. So they are stockpiling competition on the offensive line in as many areas as they can.
Yeah, and here's the thing with that statistic, Mike, as most Eagles fans would know. Lane Johnson wasn't playing last year. Brandon Brooks was out. Jason Kelce was healthy, he had one of his best years ever at center. And because the Eagles' offensive line was so bad, he didn't make an all-pro team, which is a disgrace, really, if you look at the actual numbers. Isaac Seumalo had a good year. Jordan Mailata was solid last year, but Jason Pierce was terrible. And again, that's why the Eagles allowed so many pressures. They had like 14 different offensive line combinations in 16 games. You're just not going to have that continuity like that. Remember in 2000, the Eagles started all 16 offensive line. I mean, all 5 offensive linemen, all 16 games. That's pretty impressive. Probably. It's very rare that happens. I think the Los Angeles Rams did it once or twice since then, but I got to be honest with you, Mike. Competition is going to be good. Landon Dickerson here is going to be good for Isaac Seumalo, for Jason Kelce, whether he's a heir apparent or not. Jordan Mailata, Andre Dillard, Matt Pryor competing for a backup job. There are so many jobs on this offensive line, and LaRaven Clark is one of them.
Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports. I'm going to get your opinion on this. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, okay?
Oh, boy.
How does the new coaching staff view him entering camp this year? Is he, hey, second-round pick, he's got to make the team? Or, hey, second-round pick who's done squadaddle, you've got to beat out John Hightower, Quez Watkins, Trayvon Grimes. How do you think – because the guy who drafted him is still here, but this is a new regime. So are they looking at him as second-round pick, I got to keep you, or second-round pick, you need to prove it to me?
Well, I think you got to prove it to him. Right there, Mike. He's got to beat out Greg Ward, Quez Watkins, John Hightower, Trayvon Grimes. He's got to beat these guys out because that's the situation he put himself in. He has 1 touchdown over his 2-year career. I mean, there are receivers who've had more receiving yards in a game than he's had his entire career. That's not good for a second-round pick, and he hasn't shown anything. And, in the 2019 preseason, he looked like he was going to be a solid contributor to this team. If not, the next, I don't want to say like an Alshon Jeffrey type, but, it wasn't far-fetched to think this guy could have 50 catches for about 700 yards and, 5 touchdowns in a season. Now, you're lucky if you get anything out of him. So, no, he's competing for his job. John Hightower showed a lot of promise last year before the Eagles decided to ditch him for some reason. Quez Watkins, same thing. He had a really good finish to the year last year. Him and Jalen Hurts have a good rapport. So, yeah, I'm looking for him to compete. And, if he makes the team, great. If not, no big loss. I mean, it's a second-round pick that just didn't work out. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Hopefully he can turn his career around, though.
All right, yeah, let me ask you. This is the big conversation, that Howie Roseman kind of alluded to. Hey, we're excited to get our new staff, to get our hands on some of these guys. So, he's insinuating, did Doug Peterson do a good job developing younger players, or did Howie Roseman draft poor players?
It might be a combination of both. I mean, the 2016 draft, Carson Wentz developed fine, and then he got hurt. I think Isaac Seumalo developed more than fine. Jalen Mills, look what he did. He was a 7th-round pick. But Frank Reich was there. Jim Schwartz was there. There were a lot of guys that developed. Jeff Stoutland developed a lot of offensive linemen. I mean, Matt Pryor, for what people think he is, he was a 6th-round pick who panned out and has a solid NFL career going. He's going to his 4th year in the league. You don't expect that out of a 6th-round offensive lineman. Look with Jordan Mailata. I just don't think the Eagles had enough draft picks from 2018 and 2019 to actually do anything. They had 10 combined picks. In 2020, we really don't know what this draft class is made of. Jalen Reagor's still raw. Jalen Hurts, we're going to find out this year. A lot of guys like that. The 2019 class, Miles Sanders has been great. For how rarely the Eagles use him, he's been great. Had a bad year receiving last year, but still was a dynamic home run threat at running back. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, we just don't know. You're going to have hits. You're going to have misses. I just think Doug had a problem developing younger talent overall, but I don't think it was the end-all, be-all either. I think it was a combination of Doug and Howie, but I think what the Eagles really wanted to do was get a coaching staff in here that could develop these kids, and that's why I think Nick Sirianni and these guys are here.
Yeah, I think that will be a very interesting storyline to see. Hey, does all of a sudden Reagor become more productive? Does J.J. Arcega-Whiteside become part of the offense? Does this new staff get something out of him that the old staff could not? I feel like that will be a huge storyline here for this year because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of competition in that wide receiver room. Another spot there's a lot of competition, same kind of conversation, Geoff, is Davion Taylor, linebacker, 3rd-round pick last year. They got nothing from him. A lot of, I don't want to say, it's not like this great linebacker room, but there's a lot of interesting dynamics in there. You got Singleton, you've got Wilson, who they brought in here. Then they've got Davion Taylor, a third-round pick. But then you got T.J. Edwards, who started last year. You've got Jannard Avery, who they traded for. They've got Kerrigan, who could play some stand-up stuff. They're moving.
I think he's going to play DN, though, for Ryan Kerrigan.
All right, you got Osman, who they're moving to the linebacker role. So is Davion Taylor a definitive making the team?
I think it's too early to give up on third-round pick yet. I know
Bradley, too, by the way. I forgot him.
Oh, sorry. Who was it?
Sean Bradley.
Oh, yeah, Sean Bradley. Yeah, that's right, Sean Bradley. But Sean Bradley was pretty good on special teams. So, honestly, if you can provide some value on special teams, no matter what round you're in, you're going to make a football team. And if Davion Taylor can do that, then, yeah, he'll make the Eagles. But, from what we heard about Davion Taylor, he was really raw. Well, it seems like the Eagles took a chance on him I think it was the 99th overall pick. I think that's what he was in the third round that year. Just too big of a risk. And, I thought with the Eagles linebacker situation, he would come in and, maybe contribute after 4 or 5 games just based on everything that happened. But you know what? You had a guy like Alex Singleton who basically leapfrogged him on the depth chart. T.J. Edwards was the same way. And they just never gave it up. And, Davion Taylor, to me, he's got to prove he can play on the outside. He doesn't really have any pass rushing skills, so I don't think he's going to provide value there. He's going to have to provide value in coverage on special teams. And if he can seize that number 3 linebacker role, I think it's going to be huge for the Eagles going forward. But again, it just looks like another pick that just did not do anything his rookie year or barely contributed. And you really don't know what you have. It feels like a Byron Smith, Curtis Marsh type pick.
Yeah, a kind of a stinker. And now you have a whole new defense, too. You draft Davion Taylor. I don't know that Jim Schwartz was all that thrilled about it, to be honest with you, but he was drafted for that defensive scheme. Now you have a new defensive scheme. I think that's interesting because we were talking earlier in the show. I don't know where there's a lot of competition for starting roles on this team. I think there's a lot of competition for roster spots, but I think the 22 starting spots, well, I got about 20 of them filled.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, what 2 do you have open right now?
Left tackle, I guess, is somewhat of a position, and the other corner.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, everything else, it just seems like I don't want to say they're filled because there's going to be competition, but it looks like there's going to be more. I think the Eagles are trying to build a deeper football team in case guys get hurt. Like, we know who's starting: Anthony Harris and Rodney McLeod at safety. Who's going to be the third? Marcus Epps? I mean, that's what it looks like right now, and nothing wrong with that. Marcus Epps had a good year last year.
You hope Kayvon Wallace.
Yeah, exactly. You hope it's Kayvon Wallace, but again, no disrespect to the guy, it seems like he does more talking on Twitter than he does on the field at this point. But again, it's only been 1 year. He's only a 4th round rookie. I'm not expecting much.
I mean, I guess the other spot would be the nickel corner. I mean, who's going to be that third corner that plays in the slot? Is it Josiah Scott? Is it Avonte Maddox? Is it one of the other Mary?
Do they move Max to the outside? Do they move him at safety like Schwartz did? There's going to be a lot of questions to be answered in that secondary. So yeah, it seems like there are jobs to be had, but there's also roles to be filled. And the same way on the defensive line. Where's Ryan Kerrigan going to fit? Is he going to start? Probably not. Derek Barnett's going to start. But how many snaps is he going to take away from Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat? How are they going to fit him in the rotation? Same thing at defensive tackle. Okay, you got Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave. Who's going to take that 3? Is it going to be Hassan Ridgeway? Is it going to be Milton Williams? Again, there's depth there, and I think that's what the Eagles tried to build. It's a rebuild, but they're trying to become a deeper football team, which ultimately I think was their biggest problem last year. They were not deep at a lot of positions.
That's a good point. The depth is what they're realizing, and the word competition has kept coming up and keeps coming up. And how do you get competition? You put more depth on the team. They did it today by signing another offensive lineman. They did it yesterday by bringing in. Look, Jamison Houston wasn't getting on the field on this team. Josiah Scott has a shot to get on the field. So they gave away a 6th-round draft pick to try to get a player that can add competition to the team. All right, Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, at Geoff Kerr CBS on Twitter. This offseason continues to be an interesting one for Philadelphia as they continue to try to retool this team inside the NFC East. We'll continue our look at the NFL throughout the offseason. And before you know it, man, we're going to be having training camp. We got all the mandatories on the way, and we'll be covering it here with Geoff Kerr from CBS Sports here on the Sports Bash. All right, Geoff, we'll talk to you, man.
Yes, that's great, Mike. By the way, I got a piece coming out on the NFC West Friday, 4 burning questions for the NFC West. And let me tell you, that division's loaded.
It is 4 great teams. And by the way, all 4 of those teams can make an argument to win that division, no?
Absolutely. I honestly think that the Cardinals are 8-8. I think they're good enough to win 10, 11 games. I mean, it's going to be a wide open division. It's going to be a lot of fun covering those games this year.
Check that out. Geoff Kerr, CBS on Twitter for all of his NFL offseason coverage. All right, Geoff. Thanks, man.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right. He, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. He'll be back on Friday's show. And, of course, we always talk NFL with Geoff, 525, Monday, Wednesday, Friday here on the Sports Bash. Tonight's playing games you can only hear on 97.3 ESPN. It's the Western Conference Spurs in Memphis and the Warriors and Lakers for the late night tilt. You can only hear them on 97.3 ESPN. Tomorrow we got the East play-in finale. The winner of that game will play the Sixers on Sunday. And, of course, you can only hear Sixers basketball down the Jersey Shore on 97.3 ESPN. Your home for Sixers basketball. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. All right, coming up, we got the sound of the day. We had great guests today. Legler was fantastic, by the way. Hudrick, Fitz was a lot of fun. McGarry. So what did Josh pick for the sound of the day? Find out next. All right, time for the sound of the day. 5. We try to get him in and react as much as we can. We got good guests today. Tim Legler. If you missed Legs, check that out on the YouTube channel. Geoff Mosher, Paul Hudrick, Jason Fitz, and Mike McGarry. All right, Josh, let's see what you thought stood out the most. Now, we could play the entire Legler thing again. That was fantastic. He gave a lot of great breakdown there. So let's see what stood out to you. Tim Legler on the potential Sixers opponents for round number 1, Pacers, Wizards.
The Hornets gave up 3 uncontested dunks on baseline out of bounds plays. So that shows you where they were at last night mentally. So don't go by that game. The Sixers are the best perimeter defensive team in the league. They're going to play against Indiana. Indiana, without Karis LeVert, I think Indiana has a hard time getting to 100 points. So Indiana, I don't think, gives them any trouble. Washington, with that backcourt, with the way that those two guys can get going, can control the game at the pace, yes, they could be a little bit of a problem. Philly will win the series, but I would not be shocked if Washington won a couple of games.
He also said Washington could be a headache for them. But sometimes it's funny because it's like you see these teams in the regular season. They're about 500 teams. The Pacers beat you the other night. And it's like we don't believe anything in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden you get a little tense about it. The Pacers, I feel like, would be that team that gets into – like last year, the Pacers had a decent team, and they got swept right out or they won a game.
The reason why people have been doubting the Pacers is because of the turmoil with their coaching staff, okay? The situation.
What a bizarre story that was.
I mean, well, first of all, the whole thing of them firing Nate McMillan last year didn't make sense. There was an explanation for it. Why they hired the new coach didn't make sense. Then the assistant coach wants to fight one of the players, and Miles Turner, who's injured and not playing, has to separate them, play peacemaker. And then apparently there was a rumor out there that if the Pacers didn't win the game last night, they were going to fire everyone on the coaching staff. So the Pacers, we don't believe in them, not because we think Domantas Sabonis or Malcolm Brogdon are bad players. It's because of the coaching staff. We're like, man, I'm glad we're not them.
Yeah, that whole story with the coaching staff in Indianapolis with the Pacers, bonkers. But hey, they scored 144 last night and won that game. But as Legler said, the Hornets didn't appear like they were too excited to be there.
The Hornets were checked out.
Yeah. So they rather the draft pick?
I don't know what they
Is that what we're supposed to surmise on that?
Well, the thing is that what are you going to get? The final pick of the lottery, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. This thing is still not perfect. Let's say that. Legler, how do you defend the Nets?
The key against Brooklyn is Harden gets a ton of ball screens. That's not a one-man job. So whether it's Simmons or Thibault or Danny Green, whoever's guarding him, that's not really their responsibility other than don't get blown by, because he's going to get ball screens. So he's going to engage the big. So the game plan against Harden is different than Durant and Kyrie Irving. Those guys get some ball screens too, but they do a lot of just straight attack off the dribble, try to get to their sweet spots.
So do the Sixers have the personnel to do what he said? I guess that's the question. Do they have the right personnel?
I think that it's going to be a very tricky situation because I've heard multiple people now say that they don't think Danny Green is very good at chasing offensive players.
Well, not multiple. Doc Rivers said it.
So
he said it the other night.
So if Danny Green is not a guy who went chasing people, then Danny Green really can't guard Harden because Harden's constantly.
Well, I don't think you're going to see. I mean, Danny Green, I don't think would be the guy that would guard Harden.
Well, so Simmons guards Durant. We all know that, right?
It's the anticipation.
Right. So then who guards Kyrie and Harden?
Well, here's the problem. Your starting lineup is not very equipped to do it. It's the guy like Matisse Thybulle would come in and guard Harden, maybe.
Well, that would be ideal, but then you have to start Thybulle.
Right. He's going to have to figure out how to manifest minutes. And then George Hill would probably be a better option to defend Kyrie.
So do you change
Seth Curry?
So do you change your starting lineup just for that series?
That's hard. That's a hard one because I think George Hill's a better defender than Seth Curry, obviously.
Yes.
And Thybulle's a better defender than Green.
Correct.
So, I mean, Tobias Harris has been an adequate defender. I say adequate. He's been good this year. Not great, good.
But you don't want him on any of those three.
No, and you don't want Joel on any, having to get switched on any of those guys. I know Joel likes to think he can go out in the perimeter and defend, but you don't want to be switching up and playing those guys out on the perimeter. The question is, okay, if Thibel's in the game, can you ask him to go defend Durant?
And maybe a couple possessions here and there, sure.
I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves on that because you have another question. It's like, if you're playing Washington, who's defending Westbrook?
I mean, I would assume, not to be too presumptive, but I would assume that would be Simmons, right?
I don't know. I mean, Simmons, the one problem he has is against smaller, quicker guys that can kind of get past him.
Right.
So you go Thibault, and that Thibault doesn't start, though.
Right. So, there's a lot of questions to be answered here.
Definitely. All right, let's get another one.
It's been hypothesized by some, and I can see it, that he might be even better in the slot, where he's closer to the ball. He's not a downfield weapon. The problem is the Eagles already have a fairly reliable slot receiver in Greg Ward, who's not explosive and not going to give you much downfield. So you would like J.J. Arcega to really shine at the X position, but they have guys there. I mean, Devontae can play some X. Jalen Reagor can play some X. Travis Fulgham
can play some X. Is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside on this roster? I guess is what I'm looking at.
I'm starting to lean no, honestly, because I don't know how he fits. I just don't. I don't see how he fits into this team.
I mean, the new coaching staff is going to say, hey, what was the old coaching staff not getting out of him? That's how I think that's his path to getting in there.
That would be great if that would happen, but that means he has to beat out a lot of guys.
Yeah, but a lot of guys who were not all that impressive either. I mean, Hightower is a one-trick pony.
But were they unimpressive because of the past coaching staff?
Well, he could say the same thing. Was I not impressive because of the past coaching staff? All right, it's a Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg has got you at 6:20 on game night with Josh. And then, of course, we have the play-in games in the West. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great night.